Another reality existed between the human world and the spirit world. A small group approached a giant tree from which others grew. The girl beside the boy pointed and said it was here. The elf pointed to the tree and explained that, like the others, these spirit trees have a limit to their growth and sometimes must be cut down. Smiling at the boy, she said, "This is your task." The young man with his staff approached the tree that rustled in the wind and told the elder that he could rely on him. The elf smiled gratefully and thanked Aeson for his help. The boy reached out his hand and spoke to the mighty winds of another world, asking them to lend him their strength. The winds heeded Aeson's words. Aeson braided their power into a blade and with one strike split the giant tree. A crack sounded as the trunk leaned. A bystander said happily that the tree had been cut down with a single swing and the huge trunk fell across the road. The children shouted excitedly to the teacher. It was incredible. A tree crashed into the river and floated downstream. Aeson met their eyes and said they are all children of the spirits, so someday they will be able to do the same. Before learning powerful spells, you must think about the consequences. The children listened carefully, and all agreed with every word he said. Some people did not trust the young man who kept teaching the children. He said it was his way of thanking them for letting him live here. It was no trouble for him, and they could call him any time. Isonatus had apparently been the main character living in this world for 20 years. He returned to the house and saw a girl sweeping the porch. To Rin, he said he was home. Rin, a descendant of a long-lived elven line, greeted her teacher Aeson warmly. She said he had received another letter. Rin lived with Aeson as his student. He wanted to tell her something. The girl was surprised when the teacher said he was going on a trip. Rin felt something was wrong with his teacher. The sudden departure proved it. 20 years had passed since the demon blade was destroyed. Summoned into this world to help, he now felt better, and even the girl could see it. Smiling, Aeson opened the door and told Rin they were already here. A huge pile of letters lay on the table. Next to the pile, Rin looked even more beautiful. The girl was surprised that Aeson really reads all those letters. He only nodded to show it was true. All these messages came from his former students. They were hard to deliver, but each student sent a letter every month since he was drafted. Rin remembered when Aeson asked her to read some of them aloud. All the letters were full of good news. Smiling, she said she would like to read them again. Aeson went to the window while Rin sat on the couch and picked up one of the letters. Most of his students had grown up and found their calling. They were called the 100 Heroes. Some rose to be sages, others to rulers and commanders-in-chief. Some led the finest magical academies, others entire empires. Among the letters were hundreds of messages from these geniuses, like children waiting for their father's praise, eager to share their achievements. Students talked about new lands, peoples, and discoveries they made on their own, and suggested where to go next. Aeson sat at the table and said they wanted to show him the beauty of this world, so he decided to go to the human world to see it for himself. There's a problem. His students are scattered everywhere, and if they find out he's in the human world, they could cause chaos among innocent people. The hero chose to travel alone, exploring new lands. If fate brings him to someone, a simple greeting will be enough. Rin understood everything and suggested they keep their journey secret. Aeson simply nodded, and that settled it. Simply put, the teacher decided to return to the human world, which made the girl happy. Aeson agreed that after everything he had been through, it made sense. After 20 years of full-time service, he finally recovered. Rising from his chair, he reached for the papers and said, "Answer my call." Setting off on a new journey, he asked for a safe road, and the pages flew into the air. They burst into bright light. That was the prophet's magic. Because he knew the magic words, Aeson could control the world itself. From all the letters, he summoned the one that fit best. One of them flew straight to him. The hero wanted to know which way to go. Taking the letter, he said the journey was beginning. Rin was free to do as she wished. She smiled and asked to go with him. The boy asked how much longer she would take to get ready. From behind the door, the girl said she was almost ready, then burst out of the room, apologized for the delay, and showed her backpack. Seeing Aeson in the old gear filled her with joy. Aeson smiled. She had prepared well, too. Leaving the house, he asked again whether she really wanted to go, since students should not accompany him, and Rin said she was not going as a student but only wanted to take care of him. As before, After all, he did say she was free. Hopefully that does not bother him. Isan smiled. It would be easier with her, and he was simply glad. Rin was happy too, which was wonderful. She admitted she had been preparing for this moment for a very long time. Asen was not surprised. He stepped into the field and warned that he was about to open the gate of life. He reached out his hand and a burst of light opened bright gates. Rin said excitedly that it had been 20 years since he last traveled between worlds. Asan agreed. He admitted he was more nervous than he expected. His gaze fell on the woman by the tree. An elder wanted to make sure they were actually going to leave. The hero greeted the elder spirit. The elder spirit smiled softly. Rin thanked him for his care, and Asen said his students had tried to reach him several times. It was time to leave. He is truly grateful that they were allowed to live in this world. The elven woman smiled, remembering his first arrival. She looked at the young man who had changed little in 20 years. Time ran differently in that world, so bodies aged slowly. Asan stayed almost the same. At parting, he thanked her for everything. She refused their thanks because she was partly to blame for what happened with the demon, and he had taken good care of her children. So she looked at the small souls that had appeared by the tree. The children rushed into his arms and thanked him for everything. Asan was glad they had come to say goodbye. The elder said that if he needed help, he could always ask. At the next meeting, those little spirits will be even stronger. He shook her hand and promised that when the time came, he would definitely contact her. The children wished the teacher a safe journey and said goodbye to Rin. The gate glowed, and the heroes waved as they promised to meet again. The teacher reminded Rin that their return was a secret, so they'd have to travel the world together, and Rin agreed with a smile. After that, Asan stepped through the gate and dissolved into the light. At the same moment, something strange was happening in the capital Riga, and the old man with the crown was finally satisfied with the result. The king watched a group of people whispering spells while holding magical orbs. Legend said, a prophet once lived who could defeat the demon blade, an ally of the dark god, and the old man cried out that after all these years they had succeeded. The people, tired but happy, wanted to be sure it was true. The king assured them that everyone could rest now. Leaving the hall, he thought the monthly ritual expenses had not been wasted. Even with assistance, he still did not match the great masters. Smiling, he thought, he's back. The man was Duke Daria, one of Asan's students and the kingdom's current ruler. He ordered the army to begin a search for the prophet. Daria was not sure where or when, but all signs pointed to Asan. As a young man, he studied under him, and still believed he owed all his success to that teacher. The Duke's eyes flashed, and he would do everything to find him and get the answer he deserved. Of all the students, Daria was probably one of the most devoted. Meanwhile, a glowing gate opened in the forest, and Asen stepped out. From the rise, the hero noticed they were near the city of pioneers and felt glad. Rin confirmed that people had talked about the city for a long time, but she had heard everything had already changed. He had been mentioned in letters, so Asen already knew a little. It surprised him that Rin remembered everything. Rin tapped her temple with a finger and said, "We elves have sharp memories." She prided herself on remembering every letter she was allowed to read. If he is curious about anything, he can always ask. Isan knew the forests had recovered long ago, but seeing them in person was much better. At first, he suggested going to the nearest town. He had other places he wanted to see, and Rin was intrigued, so she agreed. She had something to ask. Asan turned to her. The girl asked why his staff and book were glowing. It seemed the hero had only just remembered it. He tilted his staff toward her, and she probably felt some of his sealed power, which surprised Rin. Isan waved his staff, leaving a trail of light behind him, and said it showed they were on the right path. 20 years ago he defeated the demon blade. He ended up on the brink of life and death after losing the ability to control his powers. He sealed most of his magic in different places, so they came to a tree wrapped in vines. Touching the tree with his staff, the hero made the vines burst into light. Startled when a light formed into a ball of energy, Rin called for the sensei, not understanding what was happening. Asen calmed her, and the ball turned into a sheet of paper with a condition to unlock a power. The book attached to the staff opened. A page tore inward and the book snapped shut. The girl guessed her teacher had regained his power. Isan flipped through the pages and confirmed it was all correct. The last page said the extraction was complete and he gained the strength boost skill. Smiling, Asen guessed that all his strength had returned. Rin was happy that her teacher was now even stronger than before. The hero laughed. He really had become stronger, but the power boost only improved some of his abilities, not his full strength. Rin assumed the whole trip was Asen's plan to regain his power, but the teacher objected, saying they had come here by chance and that his real goal was to visit all his students. He sighed. The rush of new strength felt incredible. Rin suddenly grew alert when her ear twitched, and she heard something. She clicked her tongue in annoyance and asked the teacher to be more careful. Asen sighed with a hint of pity, already knowing what was coming. The heroes looked around and saw 3 wild boars standing in front of them. They were low-level creatures, lesser trolls. The boy said these usually roam near towns, not in the heart of the forest. Rin sensed how aggressive they were. She was ready to deal with them herself. When she raised her hand, a spark of lightning flashed between her fingers. Asen smiled and asked to warm up alone, a perfect chance to test his strength. He stepped forward as the trolls charged. Waiting until they drew near, the hero coldly said he would send them to hell. As they closed in, 3 flaming spears appeared around the hero and instantly pierced the enemies. A blast of pain hit the trolls and they howled. Their bodies burst into flames instantly. They were burned alive in the end, Rin said, delighted that his magic was as strong as ever. The boy noticed his fire was now even stronger than in the spirit world, and the spear's flame could destroy everything. The fire burned until it completely incinerated the trolls. Only ash remained. Still, something glowed in one of the bodies. Asen rushed over and eagerly pulled the magic stone out. These stones come from animal bodies. They are very valuable, can be sold or traded, and you will never be left empty-handed. The hero suggested they head to the nearest town because the danger was behind them. Asen and Rin set off along the path beside the clear river. The boy noticed the road was perfectly paved and the river looked very pleasant. Time had clearly improved this place. He took a deep breath of fresh air. He smiled and said the silence calmed him. Rin agreed. Suddenly a voice broke their calm. Someone in the field was rummaging in the grass looking for something, and a stranger called out that the item was missing. It was a girl, panicking because she knew that if they did not open the warehouse, everyone would be in danger. When she saw the main characters, she apologized for the noise and for intruding. She apologized for the inconvenience and asked if they had seen a key with a multicolored pattern. I showed with my hands how big the key was, but Rin and Asen shook their heads because they had just arrived and hadn't seen anything like it. She sighed and muttered that it had happened. They had almost no time, and she did not know what to do. Holding her head, she began thinking again about where the key could be and was sure it was somewhere nearby. Asen and Rin looked at each other. They understood each other without words and agreed to help. The hero said they would help find the key if permitted. Delighted but confused, she did not know how to accept such help. She did not want to trouble people who had their own concerns. Asen just smiled. It would not take long, and he felt she would be the one to find him. She looked at him in surprise. She began by saying she used to gather herbs here, but then cobalt appeared, and she decided to drive it away. Just then, her chain broke, and before she could look back, the girl lost the key. Asen got it and asked her to give him a few seconds. He bent down toward the ground and turned to the girl. He asked her to answer him and say where the colored key had gone. The girl saw the hero's body start to glow and worried that he was not all right. Asen clarified that she noticed the loss right in that spot, and he pointed to a small tree nearby. The girl admitted shyly that he was right. And though she thought the hero had already found the key, he smiled and said he only knows the general area for now. While chasing the cobalt, her keychain caught on a branch of a fallen log. Pointing to an old fallen tree by the bushes, he suggested they check it, and she listened and walked toward it. When she saw her colorful key on the ground, she shouted with joy. It really was here. She thanked the heroes for their help, and Asen said there was no need for thanks because she had found him herself. The girl apologized and asked about the magic she had just seen. She thought it had let him see the past or even the future. Asen explained it was not some high magic. The skill of finding lost things is available to many and is very useful. Earth spirits remember everything. How she chased after the cobalt and how the key snagged, and she guessed he might be a sorcerer, but he denied it and said he only listens to the voices of nature, which was new to her because few people used that magic even before he disappeared. The girl realized Asen was one of the spirit summoners and wanted to learn the spirits' names, so she could thank them. The young man introduced himself and his student Linne. She thanked them both and asked if they had come to live or were just passing through, and the young man said they planned to stay here only briefly. She invited them to the alchemist's garden in the guild when they have time to thank them. She thanked him again for helping and was sure they would meet again. Aeson smiled after her, noting her energy. Rin was happy that the key had been found and the teacher remained kind. The young man said he was simply in a great mood because every new trip is an adventure, and Rin agreed that all difficulties should be faced with a smile. Later they arrived in the city of Sagittale. Rin said there were no obstacles in the city, and they entered calmly. The hero was glad the building they were heading to was still there. They arrived at one of the Global Guild branches, which was even larger. The Global Guild is an organization that gathers data on all professionals worldwide. At registration, you are issued a global card like an ID, which lets you approach the guards and identify yourself as a traveling merchant, for example. Rin recalled the guildmaster mentioning it in a letter. She chose her profession after talking with a teacher. After the Old Town branch was upgraded, the crowding stopped and security improved a lot. Everyone was grateful. Aeson remembered it was true. The discussion with Rin had happened long ago. Now he was glad to see the result with his own eyes. Approaching the counter, the young woman called the next customer. Smiling, she welcomed them to the Global Guild and asked how she could help. The boy smiled and asked her to make a guild card for them. The girl clarified whether it was a global sample map and asked what it would be used for. Aeson said he wanted to go on a round-the-world trip. On hearing Aeson's reply, the girl looked clearly impressed and suggested he become an adventurer. Aeson found it odd that she seemed surprised by his wish, but she admitted that in all her time on the job, almost no one chose the adventurer's path. He realized the guild card you get when you register is a complete directory of professions. Choose one, and you immediately have the right to act as a guild specialist. In the past, only 30% of adventurers took on journeys and tasks. Smiling, the girl said they were brave, and she felt she lacked even a bit of that. She apologized for getting distracted, handed over the form and asked them to fill in the name and desired profession. Rin took the form and was surprised. It had many words, all job titles. Aeson understood because it was her first time. They had likely already told her about this at the temple. The form requires selecting the right profession or even several. Aeson was certain he was a prophet and a scientist and had 4 or 5 other professions. His old map burned in the war against the evil god, so he was glad it could now be restored. Looking at the form, the boy suddenly grew embarrassed. The girl noticed he was troubled. He replied that the profession prophet simply does not appear on the list. The administrator was stunned that he really wanted to register as a prophet. The boy did not see what the big deal was, but the girl whispered that the last prophet died 15 years ago, and they are considered extinct. Aeson laughed and scratched the back of his head. Maybe she was right. The girl warned him that choosing that profession would make the souls of the dead chase him and summon the Reaper. There was something even worse. The words unsettled Rin, and Aeson wanted to know more. The administrator was surprised at how easily he said that, since the king has been issuing decrees for many years. Immediately report anyone claiming to be a prophet. Then mobilize the city guard and guild members to provide an escort. Rin barely held back the laugh, and Aeson just smiled, not believing she was serious. She said if he really is the prophet, they'll put him under guard. There had already been a scandal when an imposter was caught. This isn't a lie, but it's best not to tell anyone about it. Aeson looked at Rin, who waited silently for his decision. The young man said to let them treat it as a joke, that he'd choose another profession, and thanked her for the warning. The registrar smiled and said she hoped she had helped. She admitted the joke was odd, but he had introduced himself as a brave traveler. Aeson couldn't admit it was true and didn't want patrols roaming the city because of him. He thought the king was going a bit too far. Choosing something calm, a job that would not raise suspicion but would let him travel, he wrote, "Spiritual advisor." The girl smiled and said she would give him the card as soon as he filled out the form, then asked him to wait a moment and placed a blank card on the table. She then took the stamp and stamped both documents at once. All the information from the form was transferred to the card. Giving it to Aeson made it official, and the Global Guild welcomes its new spiritual seeker of adventures. The boy gladly accepted the map and thanked them for their help. After giving me the card, the girl asked me to go to the table at the end of the hall. Aeson didn't quite understand what she wanted. Then she brought a wooden tray with 5 balls. She set it on the table. Asan asked what it was. Smiling, she said it was a device for studying magical energy. He was probably applying for the card for the first time if he did not know, and the girl remembered his strange joke again. The young man smiled. It was all a misunderstanding. He still clings to the guild's old ideas from before its post-war reforms. The girl explained that now everyone who gets a new card has to measure their magical power, and based on the result, they are given a rank from S to Caw so they can pick a safe, suitable job and reduce risk. He remembered his student had written something like this in a letter. He had built the device himself long ago, but had never seen it work. The girl smiled and said the system's creator was the guild advisor, one of the 100 heroes, and that she really wanted to thank both him and his teacher. Asan smiled. It felt strange that the inventor had been his student. He asked what to do next. The girl pointed to the right edge of the board and indicated he should touch it. Asan slowly reached out his hand to where she pointed. She explained that the number of broken balls shows the level of magic. If only one breaks, the rank is K. If all 5 break, the rank is G. New spirit priests usually get rank N. She had not finished speaking when all the balloons burst at once. Asan told the surprised girl calmly, "Yes, they all cracked." People nearby saw it and gasped. One of them shouted that the new priest had smashed all the crystals, something you don't see every day. The girl confirmed Asan had incredible magical power and gave him rank G. The young man asked what to do next. She told him to wait a moment. Everyone watched him with interest. She brought a new board with 3 balls that determines the F and D ranks. As soon as Asan touched the board, all 3 balls scattered instantly. The whole hall buzzed with talk, and no one believed the newcomer had passed rank D so quickly. Asan felt the crowd grow and wondered how many D-rank owners there were in total. The administrator brought another board that had the symbols SS, A, B, and the mysterious TS, and the hero decided not to wait and touched it. The crystal nearest the right edge cracked under his hand. Everyone froze in amazement. It was unheard of. Asan was surprised at how quickly it all escalated. The girl could not believe the boy had already reached rank B, and it had to be reported to the castle right away. But first she needed to calm down. Flustered, she could not find the report form and still had to check how to properly send the report to the king. Then another crystal cracked, and the hall fell into stunned silence. There was no telling how many more Asan would break. The hero glanced at the last 2 balls and thought it could be dangerous. Trying to hold back the magic, he kept the board from exploding completely. 2 balls remained intact. She thought it was over. With the measurements complete, she officially assigned him the rank TS. The female administrator said it was unbelievable. He earned the TS rank in a few minutes. People nearby were amazed when the newcomer surprised everyone. His skill as a spiritual mentor was far from ordinary. Asan waved to them and thanked them for their support. He was glad he had chosen TS. If he had broken Crystal B, everything would have gone to the king and caused extra commotion. He hoped to travel unburdened unless a real emergency arose. She said it would only take a little more to reach rank B. It was still a great result. Asan thanked them for their help and promised to take it into account. The girl asked him to wait a little longer because the guild had prepared a farewell gift, so Asan officially became a professional sorcerer. Rin also got her card. The administrator assumed her magical power was higher than TS rank. The hero was sure Rin's power was exceptional, and that she could follow Asan. Rin's name was little known among the students, but she said traveling with the sensei was a pleasure. And at that moment, a girl came up to them again and apologized for the delay. A man stood beside her. Asan asked who he was. The man went to the cafe's receptionist and asked her to explain everything. Dominic Sand is an E-rank spirit master and a veteran with 10 years' experience. As a gift, Asan could train with him. Dominic smiled, welcomed the newcomer, and promised to introduce him to the spirit world. Asan was surprised, so he asked what exactly was meant. Each newcomer who receives a card gets a free introductory lesson to learn the basics, she explained. That's great. Experienced masters lead the training, not just handing out textbooks. The guild avoids one-upmanship and hires real professionals. This approach builds trust in the guilds. Advisor Felicia introduced the idea, though she said it came from her master. The administrator had always thought that teacher was wise and great. Asan felt a little embarrassed because people elsewhere had not treated him that way. He remembered the letter Felicia had sent long ago asking for advice. Now he saw the result of that advice, a true calling. Although the mages were elsewhere now, Rin smiled, sure that everything was fine. Ison accepted Katya-san's offer and asked Dominic to look after him. Dominic was glad to talk, since he had even thought they would reject him because of the earring. After the introductions, they moved to Hall F. Dominic stood in front of the student and explained that a spirit mage is someone who interacts with spirits and uses their powers. Typically, a hero forms a pact with spirits or calls on them to access their power. After saying that, Dominic opened his back and a bright orb of energy shot out and wrapped around his arm. Ison assumed it was his spirit. Dominic smiled and said it was a spirit of light, one of the spirits bound to him by contract. His spirits helped cartographers and scouts, for example, by tracking down demonic creatures. Artisu-san was an adventurer, so the company had fewer tasks, but that did not make the profession any less important. Asan thanked Dominic, and now he would feel more prepared. Dominic suggested they continue, and now he will explain how to communicate with the spirit. He glanced at his hand and conjured a magic orb. A glowing orb appeared in his hand, and a spirit instantly flew up and absorbed it. Ison guessed it was a form of communication. Dominic confirmed it was one of the ways to feed the spirits. Give a spirit magic in the form of food, and it will help in return. You can even use that magic to make an enemy ill. The hero knew spirits were honest. They always give back what they were given. Dominic hoped Asan had remembered the spell, and Asan confirmed it. The hero decided to create a magic orb and made it on his first try. Dominic was impressed by its size and power, as befits a mage of rank TS. Ison said he owed it to him. The spirit seemed to agree. Dominic laughed, thanked him for the support, and summoned his spirit. The spirit's behavior suggested to Asan that there was a strong bond between them. Dominic confirmed it was because of their long journey together. Asan asked if Dominic really talks to his spirit. Dominic did not understand what he meant. Asan explained that his spirit seemed to be talking to him all the time. Dominic was shocked, and he remembered how the spirit squeaks when petted. If Asan understands what that means, he is truly amazing. Dominic could not resist, and asked the hero what the spirit's squeak and pulsing meant, impatient to learn what he was talking about. Ison heard his voice clearly and said the spirit thanks Dominic for valuing him. The spirit said it did not care how many magic orbs were used, which greatly surprised its mage. Dominic's spirit leapt with joy, but he thought they were just joking with him. Ison smiled. He had simply translated the spirit's words and there was no deception. Dominic looked at him and said it was incredible. Understanding the language of spirits is extremely difficult. This ability is available only to high-level mages. Asan was surprised it was a real technique, and Dominic said he had studied it for years but only knew a few words. He can read emotions from movement, nothing more. Rumors said some people are born with a gift for sensing spirits, and he never expected to see a student like that in person. Ison thought Dominic was a genuinely good person because he praised him so sincerely. He apologized because he was just too overwhelmed. He believed nothing could surprise him anymore. Asan proved him wrong. The lesson was over, and even the student taught him a few things. Finally, Dominic said that he would become a first-rate spirit mage, and as his mentor, Dominic would write the best recommendations for him. He admitted he had failed at communicating with spirits. Asan thought the mere fact of that skill was already the highest praise. Dominic apologized for having taught little, and now they were colleagues. Asan shook his hand and thanked him sincerely, saying that meeting such an experienced mage was an honor. Rin waited for his return and greeted him with a smile. While he was away, she received a city map from Keisha with the hotels marked. The boy praised Rin and said it was really time to find a place to stay. The registrar added, "There are plenty of good inns near the guild." Ison wanted to pick a nice place because they would stay here for about a week. Rin agreed and even spoke with the bartender about the exchange rate, which had barely changed in 20 years. They could live comfortably for 3 months in a good hotel. Rin had a magic bag that held much more than it seemed. It's good that she took him. Money can wait for now. As an adventurer, Asan can sell information about new places to cartographers. A girl suddenly ran up to them to make sure they were really Ison and Rin, and the boy looked at her questioningly. The girl who lost the key was the same one. Her name was Eureka, and she was an alchemist. Overjoyed by the meeting, she heard the guild buzzing about them. The encounter felt like destiny. Ison asked Eureka if so many people already knew about them. Smiling, she said there was no need to address her so formally. A friend of nearly all the guild staff, she had heard that two people with incredible magic had just registered. Remembering that they had helped with the key, she immediately knew it was them. She asked whether they had really become adventurers, and the boys confirmed it. Then she invited them to her shop in the alchemical garden. They have everything from alchemical ingredients to magical artifacts, and she was sure there would be something for them too. Isun did not object. It would be interesting to see. But first, they needed to find a hotel before all the rooms were taken. Eureka said her shop also served as an inn. She showed them the garden on the map. Isun agreed it was a good place, so he decided to stay there. She insisted on paying for their stay even though they wanted to pay themselves. The key was too valuable to her. Isun accepted her offer and decided to stay with them. He asked Rin, who gladly agreed. Rin did not care where as long as it was near the teacher. Eureka promised they would treat them as honored guests. A few minutes walked from the guild they reached Eureka's shop, which was large, and she proudly said it was the biggest shop in town. A sign above the entrance read, Alchemist's Garden. When the heroes entered, the shopkeepers warmly welcomed President Eureka. They had not expected her to return so soon. The girl smiled and said she had met someone special. Isun and Rin exchanged surprised looks. They did not know she was the president. Eureka admitted she had been hiding something. It turns out she is the president of the alchemy company, the Alchemist's Garden. She introduced herself formally and said she was pleased to meet us. The heroes sat at the nearest table. Nearby, a worker told another that this spirit mage had helped their president Eureka. Rumors were already spreading that two extraordinary people had joined the guild. One guy added that their president was strong, though sometimes a little absent-minded. He wanted to know exactly how the hero had helped Eureka and whether those rumors were true. Isun heard it all and looked at the boys. Rin whispered that the situation was repeating just like in the guild. The hero was amazed at how fast his fame spread, and the guild was really close. Eureka approached them and said the room will be ready soon, then asked to speak with Isun, who agreed. Despite her rank, Eureka gathered herbs outside town, which surprised Isona. The girl said she wanted to prove she could manage on her own. The herbs were important for potions, so she chose to do it herself. Now it was clear how it had happened. While they talked, a man came up to Eureka. He apologized for the trouble and thanked them for their help. Eureka said it was fine, because she had lost the key to the magic storehouse. She asked that the main characters be thanked because they helped her a lot. Bowing, he thanked not only Eureka, but also Isun and Rin, because they had saved the company's important negotiations. He thanked them again. It was truly important. Isun didn't think he'd done anything special. He had only found the key. Suddenly, Eureka went quiet and smiled, leaving him confused. She apologized when a strange thought came to her. Looking at Isun, she remembered the person who had once trained her. They had a similar aura, and the boy grew curious about who that person was. Eureka said she called her master, because the woman taught her to never stop regardless of status. She was one of the 100 heroes and is now the rector of the University of Magic. Rin was surprised and realized it was Master Mel-san of Kuniminia. Isun remembered the witch Mel as an energetic girl. Eureka attended a nearby branch instead of the main campus in the capital. Not one to sit still, she traveled and in recent years worked at a university near the city. The southern branch of the magical university in Sagittale was her home. A young employee entered the president's office and handed Ms. Chokros the guild's weekly report. The long-haired girl in a big hat thanked and will check it right now. Using a strand of hair, she took the report and read it. The worker also reported that a suspicious man wants to see her and his face is hidden by a magical mask. Chokras said she knew who he was and that he could be let through without a search. A tall man entered, and the girl smiled. Mr. Duke rarely leaves the capital. The king removed his mask and smiled because he was working nearby and decided to stop by. He wanted to talk about Master Isun and believed that finally the student's deepest wish would come true. Recently, a rumor has been going around that a powerful prophet has appeared in the world. Mel was stunned that their master might be returning, but Duke said the divination did not confirm it was Isun, and when or what is happening is unknown. Chokros lowered her head sadly. She knew Duke's accuracy nearly matched the master's. No one knew exactly who had appeared, but the prophetic gift was priceless. The girl was eager to meet him, especially if he was their master. The Duke said the guilds had already been given special instructions and were preparing for his arrival. Realizing time was short, she hurried to finish her tasks so she could greet Master Asen in time. Admiration lit the king's eyes, and he wanted to see him too. Talking about work, they mentioned the city's chief guild mistress is a real pioneer. Chokraz said being a master is hard but rewarding. She also teaches children. Every week she got reports on how many experts of each rank joined the guild, and this season the statistics were excellent. The girl said there were many D levels and even a few TS. The king was glad because people wanted to serve the capital. But Chokraz had bad news too. In recent months, the number of monsters around the city had been rising. There were plenty of physically strong people, but mages were growing fewer. The Duke saw this could weaken security. He asked Chokraz, on his return to the capital, to consider sending professional mages for the mission. She agreed, left the decision to him, and promised to send the reports and letters. And Duke wanted to write to Master Asen right away since she understood him, though it would be better if the master came here in person. The next morning, Asen woke up in his room and felt something strange. He looked at the bed beside him. Rin was still asleep. Usually she woke up earlier. In her sleep, she mumbled something about the sensei and smiled. Aisen smiled gently and decided to let her sleep a little longer. Suddenly, the girl woke up and rubbed her eyes. The boy was glad she was awake. Sitting at the table, he heard Rin apologize for sleeping in. Aisen thought she did not need to apologize, and that everything was fine. Rin disagreed, because as a student she should care for her teacher, but instead she had worn herself out. The boy thought she shouldn't blame herself so much. Rin remembered she should read the letters, since all the students were very worried about him. He noticed Rin was still tired from yesterday. Her internal clock was off from traveling, and she reminded him that Sensei uses magic on the road. She would like to get up at the same time as him, but his stamina is high, so she'll have to adjust. The young man thought improving his fitness was a good idea, and was sure Rin would do everything they could. He agreed and saw that she was finally awake. After breakfast, he suggested a walk through the town and nearby countryside. Rin was happy. She had been looking forward to a trip with her teacher. Aisen laughed, saying they would arrange a tour of the city of Sigil. The town proved lively and crowded. They walked the streets, stopping in eateries and flower shops. Rin even showed the sensei a juice made from fruits that grow only in the pioneer city. They tried every flavor, and everything was delicious. Then they visited a horse farm and later went to the large statue in the city center. Near the end of the walk, the heroes climbed onto the roof of the alchemist's garden and looked out over a beautiful view of the city and the countryside. Aisen agreed. The view was amazing and the mood was calm. Rin was glad Eureka let them go up onto the roof. Aisen assumed there should be a branch of the magic university over the hill, but he did not see it. The girl said it was probably the university where Chokraz works now. The hero remembered that Chokraz was a brilliant sorceress and wanted the girls to meet. Rin was delighted because it would be wonderful. He saw no reason to refuse. Getting to know good people is always useful. If Sensei Aisen insists, Rin will gladly meet Chokraz. A bell rang, and the heroes remembered it had been mentioned in one of the letters. The bell belonged to the Global Guild and signaled noon. Aisen smiled, checked his watch, and realized the walk had gone on too long. He invited Rin to lunch at the guild, and she agreed because they served dishes you could not find anywhere else. Aisen found the vegetables and meat truly incredible, just as the student's letter said. The nearby fertile fields were perfect for raising livestock, and their meat was used to make delicacies. Smiling, the hero admitted he was glad to be there, saying it was the best part of his journey. A woman's greeting came from the side. The receptionist Kaisha was happy to find them there. Smiling, she admitted she had a request for them. Aisen listened carefully. A young woman reported that a wind spirit is raising a storm over the farmlands. They lack the strength to deal with it, and only a spirit mage can stop it. The situation was critical, so she turned to Aisen. The hero agreed they had to act immediately. Unless the spirit is stopped, it will destroy fields and orchards. So far, there have been no casualties, but delay could be fatal. Aisen paused and assured that he understood everything perfectly. In a letter, Chokraz said the university students are very talented. It would be a shame if they were harmed. So Aisen promised they would help. Kaisha lit up, since the task was made for the TS level, for Aisen and Rin-sama. The hero smiled and promised to do his best. Rin also promised to help. Kaisha thanked them and offered to come along, saying she would introduce them to someone who would explain everything and go with them. They went up the stairs to the administrative hall. They found Dominic waiting for them. The heroes and Dominic exchanged surprised looks. Isan greeted Dominic-san politely, but Dominic asked not to be so formal, saying it was an honor to work with them. The hero said he could talk to spirits and counted on Dominic's support. Dominic also trusted the spirits and expected the mission to succeed. Dominic admitted the task was difficult. Azon asked the registrar for more details. She unfolded the map and pointed to the woods between the farm and the orchard. That is where the storm appears. They were told to calm the spirit by any means possible, to tame it or drive it out, and the choice was theirs. Rin suggested using any method, and Kaisha agreed. The spirit is very strong, so she trusts them with it. Buravi appears in the forest, but no one has seen the spirit itself. Its class is unknown. Isun could not understand why the situation had become so dangerous. Spirits always have a reason to be angry. The administrator confirmed that nothing happens without a reason. The scouts found it all began suddenly. The spirit likely became angry over something they do not yet know. They don't want to destroy the spirit. They must calm it, find out why, and of course they will pay for the information. Isan laid out the task. Find what is making the spirit angry and calm it. The difficulty is at least rank D. Rin was surprised it really was true, and Kaisha confirmed it. The spirit was immune to physical attacks, and there could be many reasons for its rage. This made the task even harder. Dominic smiled. After 10 years as a spirit mage, it was still a challenge even for him. It surprised him that Asen and Rin weren't worried at all. They seemed calm, and Dominic assumed it was because of their high rank. Deep down, he felt a little uneasy. Although sending a TS-ranked newcomer to a D-level task felt almost like considering oneself a Tengu, Dominic judged Asen not an arrogant upstart, but a modest, reliable ally. Isan brightened at his words and suggested they leave for the mission right away. Kaisha warned that the guild has regeneration potions just in case and asked everyone to be careful. Isan, Rin, and Dominic left town for the woods, following a trail to the storm's epicenter. A giant tornado funnel churned in front of them, the wind rising into the sky. The heroes stared up in shock and had never seen wind so powerful. Isun thought it was not yet a real tornado. Scouts said a spirit sat at the center of the vortex, and Dominic confirmed it. Dominic reached out and summoned the spirit Valop, using the spirit's power for protection. The small spirit squeaked and turned into a shell-like shield. The protective bubble expanded, completely covering everyone. Dominic told them to conserve their strength and that he would lead them forward. Isan activated protective magic, signaled Rin, and Dominic agreed to move on. The hero praised Dominic's dome because the debris did not get in the way. Dominic thanked him, glad he could help. Extreme caution was needed. A tornado was roaring overhead. Isan told Dominic to duck. Dominic was surprised, but the hero heard a warning from the stone spirit that something was flying. Dominic didn't have time to say anything when a wooden stake almost hit his head. Dominic went pale when he saw the stake stuck nearby. He had nearly died. How did Asan predict this? The boy did not expect anything. He simply listened to the spirits' voices and heard them even through the storm. Isan smiled, and Dominic, impressed, said he was surprising them again. The hero confirmed he was all right. Dominic asked permission to get up. Asan agreed. They went on and finally saw her. An egg lay right in front of them. It seemed to be the source of the tornado. Dominic could not judge its power. The egg began to stretch, and a dark hole opened in its center. A spirit that looked like a girl sat inside the cocoon. Dominic froze, stunned to see a spirit in human form. Her magic was extraordinary. She was an elder spirit who opened her eyes and looked at them. Dominic explained that these spirits change form and fall asleep, so the scout could not assess her level. Elder spirits live only in special places like sacred mountains or magic springs and cannot be attacked without the proper rank. F-rank mages stand no chance against such creatures. This task is at least B rank. Dominic, an experienced mage, chose to cover for the newcomers because they have their whole future ahead of them. A spirit came closer but did not seem hostile. Dominic activated his protective shield just in case. He had barely raised his hand when the ghostly girl pointed at him. A gust of wind suddenly burst out as the spirit unleashed a magical attack, knocking Dominica backward. His body flew several meters and hit a tree. Dominic realized it was a gust of wind. Only the protective sphere saved him, but the spirit unleashed colossal power with a single flick of a finger. He lifted his head in hope. Dominic breathed a sigh of relief, glad he was the only one hurt. He planned to turn back and act as bait so the others could escape. He could not get up. His body would not obey and was paralyzed. The spirit lifted its hand again, but this time it moved more slowly. Dominic realized the target was Aeson, not him, and shouted for Aeson to run. The hero just smiled and asked them not to worry, saying it was time to use the staff cut technique. The spirit pointed at Aeson, but he easily stepped aside. Part of the attack missed, and he cut the rest with his staff. Dominic watched Aeson with surprise when Aeson asked if Dominic was all right. The amazed mage then asked how Aeson had managed it. The hero said he used a bit of foresight magic to turn the staff into a weapon that could cut the wind, and he offered no further explanation. Aeson swung his staff and again deflected the spirit's faltering attack. The hero smiled and motioned to continue. The spirit kept attacking, but Aeson confidently parried every strike. Raising his staff, he split the next attack in two. Meanwhile, Rin batted away stones falling from above, showing Dominic her skill. The girl turned out to be skilled at close combat. She defended and talked about Aeson's strength, but Dominic was referring to her. The mage sighed. They were unlikely to be able to do anything about it. Against the elder spirit, ordinary attacks were useless, and only A-rank adventurers could match it. Aeson smiled. They had no intention of fighting. Dominic didn't believe he really wanted to talk to her. It was risky. Dominic feared the spirit would refuse to speak or accidentally hurt them. Aeson told them not to worry and said he would try to sort things out. The hero approached the spirit, greeted it, and asked for a few minutes to talk. The ghost girl rubbed her eyes in surprise when she saw him up close. She pointed at him and said it was him. As Aeson had guessed, she could speak. Awareness and understanding lit her eyes, and she began to suspect something about the boy. Dominic realized the spirit was upset. If something went wrong, he was ready to distract her so the others could get away. The spirit covered her eyes, annoyed by human speech. Only those who speak the language of spirits will get an answer. She already knew the prophet before her was Aeson, who had defeated gods and demons, protected the queen of spirits, and mastered the magic of the current spirit king. The hero hesitated, but agreed. The girl brightened because she was his admirer. Aeson was surprised that she knew him. She explained that in the spirit world he is a legend. Everyone who remembers how he saved them loves him. Her mentor is a relative of the late spirit emperor. Aeson had never heard that. He had defeated evil spirits, but being the hero of the spirit world was too much. Besides, he was from another universe. The elder spirit smiled, half asleep and not noticing him right away. The hero thought of her as a cat curled into a ball. Dominic heard a mix of high and low sounds and wasn't sure everything was all right. Aeson just smiled. The spirit was much friendlier than it seemed and asked for a little time. Everything was exactly as the spirit girl expected. Her speech was hard for people because it was full of magic, but Aeson spoke it surprisingly fluently. Prophets were made to speak this language, so it was no surprise that Aeson had good skills. Now he wanted to find out why she was causing such a storm. She did not fully understand what he meant, and assumed he meant a light breeze she could use to warn people. But Aeson pointed up, and for the people it was not a breeze but a hurricane. Each race sees reality differently. If she had really wanted to attack, she would have sent a wave of wind long ago. He realized she was trying to warn people about the danger. He was right. The spirit wanted to warn of demonic beasts in the forest that spread miasma. Miasma is a form of magic that empowers demons. Depending on the dose, it mutates the body or the soul. The evil god used it, making it part of himself. He scattered parts of his body across the world. Aeson already knew some demonic creatures had absorbed those fragments. The girl confirmed it. When the beast eats part of the evil god, an organ forms inside it that produces miasma. That explains the whole situation. The Spirit King ordered her to keep people away from those creatures, so she raised winds to drive them off. Aeson understood why the whirlwind was needed and asked to hear about the most demonic beasts. The girl said it was a horned mole, like a normal mole but with a big horn. It was not strong, but it hid well. Her magic was too imprecise to hit it. Dominic noticed Aeson was impressed and was equally surprised by how Aeson spoke to a high-ranking spirit. Not understanding their language, he decided to trust the prophet. A strange gesture from the girl caught his eye. She seemed unhappy. Tension grew. Meanwhile, the spirit admitted she was tired of fruitless attacks and decided to rest a little, which explained why she stayed here. Rin smiled and told Dominic to rest a bit, confident that Aeson would take care of everything. Aeson suggested she handle her hurricane while he dealt with the beast. The spirit was surprised and wondered if he could really do it. And if he could, she would be truly grateful. She warned him that if he failed, the tornado would return. If he succeeded, she would reward him. It was time to say goodbye. The girl rose into the air and vanished in the distance. Dominic watched her in surprise. He had never seen anyone communicate so easily with a higher spirit. The heroes watched her until her silhouette disappeared into the sky. Dominic turned to Aeson, who was truly incredible, and forced the spirit to leave with only words. The hero said he had not driven her away. Instead, she had assigned them a task. He recounted everything. Dominic realized the spirit had only protected people and felt ashamed for thinking otherwise. Aeson asked not to be blamed because the situation really looked threatening. Dominic thanked them for the support and felt relieved. He clarified that their enemy was a horned mole. The mission was rank D. Aeson reminded them that monsters also have ranks. Demonic beings with miasma are always a rank higher. A mole like that is already TS level. Dominic admitted they share the same rank, so it's a worthy opponent. The battle would be hard. Dominic wanted to help because he had chosen the mission himself. Aeson was surprised but glad because they would be better together. Meanwhile, Rin looked around warily. The girl heard a strange sound coming from the forest. Dominic excitedly noted that the hero knew where to look for those creatures. Aeson just smiled. The spirit had already pointed everything out, so they did not have to search since the creatures came to them. Rin confirmed Aeson's words with her eyes fixed on the forest and drew her blades as the monsters were already moving toward them. Nearby, dark creatures that looked like horned moles began to crawl out of the ground and thick undergrowth. The hero guessed the biggest one at the back was their leader. Dominic agreed. The wind died, and the creatures headed straight for them. Since he was TS rank, he thought he could handle it alone and rushed forward. Aeson grabbed his shoulder and told him to wait. Dominic did not understand. He thought they had to be destroyed so the spirit could not raise the storm again. The hero did not object but warned that there were more monsters than it seemed, and then struck his staff on the ground 3 times. Immediately after that, new creatures started crawling out of the ground. Dominic froze. There were at least 20 of them, all crawling straight at them. The higher spirit did not warn about this many. Aeson guessed they multiply through the miasma. The young were smaller but not weaker. Although the miasma did not speed up reproduction, the new creatures were no less dangerous than the adults. Dominic warned that they could not be fought, so the miasma's source had to be destroyed and the others would lose their power, and Aeson was glad to hear this. But for now that was impossible, because the monsters saw them as spirits and therefore as easy prey. Rin believed the monsters saw them as a threat. No doubt we'll have to fight. Although they look like moles, they are actually powerful demons. Aeson warned the enemies were already close, and it was time to prepare. The whole pack surged forward instantly in a wild charge on all paws. Dominic saw the attack, but could not understand how Aeson had predicted it. Maybe Aeson read the movements, but this was not the time for guesses. Reaching out, the man used the light orb technique. A drop of energy burst into countless orbs that sliced through the enemies. That still wasn't enough. The rest of the creatures flew on. Dominic shouted that they were fast. One of the monsters jumped right onto him. Instinctively, Dominic raised his hand, but Aeson stepped in and struck the mole on the head. He survived. Aeson asked if he was all right, and Dominic nodded because the blow had been strong. He spotted another monster right behind Jason. At that moment, Rin flew between them and cut the creature to pieces. The hero smiled and thanked his student. She only nodded and said no thanks were needed, confident the sensei could have handled it himself. Aeson said she had saved him, so he was sincerely grateful. Together they began taking out enemies. Rin admitted she liked a serious sensei. Dominic was surprised by how well the girl fought in close combat. Rin only smiled. She could when needed. She asked to leave some of the monsters for her, even if it won't be necessary. The hero noticed the creatures hesitated and would not come closer. Maybe the leader was sending a command to flee through vibrations in the ground. Aeson decided they had to finish them before they escaped. Raising his staff, he asked the air to gather into a blade. An air blade struck the horde, cutting the monsters in half in a clean, devastating strike. The demon leader did not even have time to move. His body was sliced like the others. Dominic opened his eyes wide at the sight of that incredible magic. Trees fell straight onto the dead creatures. Aeson sighed. The source of the miasma was finally destroyed. Dominic shouted that this spell was stronger than a spirit storm, and not even a B-rank mage could have conjured it. He asked which book the hero learned the technique from. Aeson smiled and said he had invented it himself long ago. Prophets usually got their magic from books or from the voices of spirits living in sacred dwellings. And there were also ancient collections made by the Emperor of Spirits himself. Aeson trained by trusting an inner voice that showed him the way to power. Dominic realized it all, and was once again convinced how unique this young man was. Even an A-rank master couldn't reach that level alone. Short on time before joining the guild, the hero explained. A breathless man ran up to them and caught their attention. The man smiled and thanked them for saving his ranch. Aeson guessed it was the landowner. The owner confirmed he had called the guild and the university. I contacted 2 places at once, which was costly, because far too many threats had gathered here. The master was glad Aeson was here. At that moment, the hero noticed Dominic acting oddly. Wiping his eyes, he nearly fell and Aeson steadied him. Dominic apologized. The magic had drained him more than he'd expected. Compared to Aeson and Rin, he looked pitiful. The hero asked not to blame himself. Everyone has their own limits. The host agreed and offered him a taste of his special vegetables. Aeson had never heard of them, but the man explained that they restore magical power. The heroes readily agreed, and a rest was in order. The master was glad and led them to his house, which was right nearby. At lunch, the men thanked the owner for the treat. The owner only smiled. It was his way of repaying them for the rescue. Aeson thought that as an adventurer, this was the first time he had heard such sincere thanks. Dominic decided to go first to report that the mission was complete. At parting, he reminded them that turning in the report early would slightly increase the pay, and asked permission to do something useful because he had done little in the fight. Aeson agreed, and they were in no rush. Later, they said goodbye to the farm owner and headed back. Aeson noticed the vegetables had really helped restore Dominic's strength. Rin was glad Dominic felt better. The hero noted it resembled the effect of a weak potion, and remembered a letter from a student who said he had become the owner of a farm and was growing magical crops. Only selected farmers received the seeds of these plants. The seeds were studied and then sent to the company. Aeson smiled. A pleasant feeling lingered after the mission. Maybe it was the first time he'd felt that. Suddenly the book inside his staff lit up. Rin guessed that something had activated. The hero agreed, saying he may have left part of his power here. Aeson pointed his staff at the stone. The glow grew stronger. Its power was clearly here. Stepping closer, the boy smiled, feeling lucky today. He performed the unsealing ritual. A magical page flew into the book, and it snapped shut. Rin was stunned at how quickly his power returned. Aeson called it a coincidence. The girl asked what he had gotten, and when he checked the page, the prophecy's power had expanded to cover a larger area. Rin realized his prophetic power was growing. Her dream was to see Aeson at the height of his strength. Mission accomplished, dinner was good, energy restored, success on all fronts. Now it's time to head back. The guild administrator met them with relief, glad they had returned unharmed. People inside immediately recognized the heroes as the team that had completed the most dangerous mission. Everyone celebrated the arrival of the new hero. The guys were a bit confused, but Dominic appeared and said they had arrived just in time. The hero seemed surprised, and the other explained he had just filed the report, and the administrator asked whether they had been injured because the report said the mission ended with no injuries. Aeson confirmed everything was fine. Rin said there weren't even any scratches. The administrator grew even happier. She seemed truly happy, but clearly nervous. The hero noticed people around them still staring and asked what was going on. They were informed that after the team left for the guild, an alarming report arrived from the Magic University. The hero remembered that the farm owner had indeed said he had also reached out to the university. The administrator said the guild and the university have long worked together. They share knowledge and tools, though delays sometimes occur. That happened with this request. The presence of a spirit and a crowd of horned moles, strengthened by miasma, pushed the task above rank B, and the spirit was judged higher. In that dangerous zone, there were only 3 people, and the guild was on edge, ready to send a rescue team. Dominic returning unharmed shocked everyone. Isan looked at the administrator in surprise as she confirmed he had calmed the spirit and stopped the tornado. The hero nodded, and everyone began discussing it with obvious excitement, convinced he was rank TS. Isan thought the spirit was not angry at all. Anyone who could speak with her knew she posed no threat. Despite everything, everyone was thrilled. It seemed impossible to them. He managed what even an adventurer of TS rank could not. She said the guild has a detective who can spot lies, so there is no doubt about Dominic's words. But how much happened is overwhelming. Isan was not surprised. Years of talking to spirits and defeating monsters had made it routine for him. After everything, the administrator apologized that she had sent them to a place that was too dangerous without realizing it. The hero asked them not to apologize. They learned about the difficulty only later. Besides, he acted on his own, so the guilds had no reason to feel guilty. Her smile became more genuine. The hero's words truly calmed her, and she thanked him sincerely. The reward had been raised, so they had to wait a little while because it was still being prepared. The hero nodded but asked why the pay had been increased. The girl explained it was a special case and the guild leadership agreed, so she could not give any bonus and simply raised the amount. Isan was surprised and wanted details from Dominic because he suspected Dominic had added something. Dominic only reported what he had seen. Thanks to Isan, everything ended quickly. Even though Isan acted without permission, they still had to give the reward. The hero was grateful. Dominic clarified that the base pay is 15,000 gold for 3 people. Usually 10,000 is enough to live on for a month. He also said that working overtime raised the amount tenfold. If that's true, the heroes were supposed to receive 150,000 gold. Dominic scratched the back of his neck and said it still wasn't enough. The administrator looked embarrassed because working with a higher spirit usually required the budget of a whole city or country. Isan reassured them that even 10 times the amount was large and he would gladly accept it. The hero asked if Dominic would share the reward, but he refused, saying he didn't need anything extra and that everything belonged to the guys. Isan didn't understand, so Dominic explained that he had simply led them to the right place. Even a standard reward of 5,000 was already too much. If they refuse it, he will just give everything to the guild. The hero agreed, but only if he could treat Dominic to food or sake. Otherwise, he would feel awkward. He blushed, smiled, and said, Isan always knows the right thing to say, then offered to bring his partner along. Isan didn't object, and invited everyone in the guild to celebrate their first successful mission. Everyone partied into the night. The next day, Eureka arrived at Sagatella, a branch of the Southern Magical University. She entered the president's office and said she had brought the guild's report. Jerica brought the report this time, and Mel thanked her for helping. No longer a student, the girl could meet Mel only for official reasons. Mel said she would always make time for her. Jerica felt awkward about taking someone's time, but hoped she would get another chance to do a similar task. Mel noted that Jerica has deep ties to the guild and the university, which benefits both sides. Noticing Jerica's odd look, she blushed and said her hair was still as shiny as before. She admitted that as a student she had always wanted to touch him. Mel smiled, thanked her, and said it was inappropriate. Mel's hair is her clan's legacy, and may be touched only in rare cases. Jerica realized it was a clan tied to spirits. Mel confirmed that only the chosen may touch her. Her hair bears a magical blessing. If someone tried to touch it by force, it would throw them back. Jerica realized almost no one touched Mel's hair. Smiling, she confirmed that only those with great magical power or her heart's permission would be able to touch. To reach that level, you must constantly sharpen your alchemy. Not even 100 heroes could touch it that easily. Jerica understood this and promised to try. Mel dug into the reports and was surprised by one that described a spirit and a miasma appearing at the same time. The request said there were higher spirits and monsters. Fortunately, no one was harmed. Mel regretted that the information had not arrived earlier, because the incident could have been prevented. Eureka agreed that the system they created with 100 heroes works, but it needs more time to fully adapt. Despite this, life became safer. Mel's and the heroes' inventions proved genuinely useful. Jerica thanked them, Mel admitted most of what she made was done while training under the master. Eureka reminded her that now she had to be the mentor. Eureka got curious about the president's master and wanted to meet him. Mel said she also wanted to see him again. Turning back to the report, she noticed something that caught her attention again. The report mentioned a TS rank who defeated a demonic beast and drove off a spirit, which should not be possible because TS mages do not deal with spirits. Eureka said that rumors spread through the guild today that a fearsome spirit and a mysterious mage had appeared nearby. This meant the mage had extraordinary power. The director believed rank was decided by magical rather than physical strength, and talent did not matter. She smiled and decided that if he really was that talented, he should be introduced to the others. Maybe it was time for Chuki to visit the city. Mel opened another urgent report. The number of demons emerging from the miasma was rising rapidly. Eureka confirmed sadly that the horned mole's hunger is a serious problem. Chemical supplies are running low, and they're even eating other monsters' food. This will make demons more aggressive, and the chance of encountering them will rise sharply. The smartest among them will start hunting mages. Mel noted it was time to be more alert. Despite everything, communication between the city and the school needs to improve. Eureka agreed and suggested improving how information is shared. A few days later, Asan and Rin were walking through the city as the trip turned into an adventure. A demon attacked them without warning, but they handled it easily. After that, the hero sold the magical stones to an alchemy company. It was a busy day. That morning, Rin and Asan sat on the first floor of the alchemy garden. The boy said he had already seen everything mentioned in the letter. He suggested leaving town this afternoon, and Rin agreed, saying she liked it here but wanted to know where to go next. Asan suggested heading south. There are many small towns on the way to larger cities, and the roads are decent. He asked if Rin wanted to go anywhere in particular. She smiled and would go where the teacher decided. Asan agreed, so they went south. The protagonist wants to stop by the university to visit Chowki. She is unlikely to be free, but it would still be nice to see how she is doing. Rin said everyone asks why her teacher is so strong yet attentive to others. She always says that's just how he is. Asan only smiled. With the decision made, the young man suggested they say goodbye to Eureka. They had to gather, and Asan asked Rena to prepare for the meeting with the students. They walked up to the alchemy garden reception desk. The attendant realized they were looking for President Jericho and asked them to wait a moment. Asan offered more tea and Rin gladly agreed, but as soon as they sat down, a man came over and apologized for the wait. The hero recognized him, the secretary who always accompanied Jarek. He confirmed that the president had gone to the Magic University and would return only tomorrow. The secretary was genuinely sorry, but said that if Asan had errands, he could accompany them to the university. The hero was pleased because they were just about to go there. He asked for an escort, and the man gladly agreed. The doors were open, and a carriage waited outside. It was less than an hour to the university. The hero thanked them for their hospitality, and the secretary said it was an honor to help the president's friends. 3 student council members entered Mel's office and reported that preparations for the evening course were complete, and the magical speaker was working perfectly. Mel thanked them, saying everything was done faster than she expected. One woman admitted that it was the first lecture from the president of Sta Heroyev in a long time, and more than 30 listeners had already gathered. Eureka smiled and said Mel is still as popular as in her student years. Mel replied that it is nice there are still so many motivated young people. A knock sounded at the door. The duty officer brought a report from the watchtower. The captain of the guard was already waiting, and the girl let him in. He reported that strange magical fluctuations were detected in the southern area. Ordinary instruments could not detect anything, and he asked Mel to check it personally. Pensive, she stepped to the window facing south and decided to check everything herself. He nodded and returned to his post. The university was behind a protective barrier, but no anomalies were found, and Mel did not think it mattered, because she would see for herself. She lifted her magic spear, pointed it up, cast Detect Magic, then switched to her threat detection skill. A blinding ball of light burst from the spear, flew through the window and disappeared into the distance. Mel told Jerica that if it was magic, they would notice it. Erica watched Chowki in amazement, never having seen such magical sensors, and the president had plenty of power. Mel smiled. During the war with the god of evil, this was her usual tactic. To Eureka, such pure and graceful magic looked like a fairy tale. Chuki smiled and said that despite all the praise, their equipment did not work this time. Meanwhile, tracks appeared on the field with no visible owner. A transparent creature moved slowly toward the university. Even so, Chuki's magic had an impressive range. Mel admitted her master was better at sensory magic. Eureka realized this meant the prophet and was surprised. Mel confirmed that her mentor heard voices from all around him, as if he had eyes everywhere. An extraordinary spirit instrumentalist, he could speak with the earth and even with plants. Bell Grind noted that communicating with earth spirits is impossible if you cannot see them. Eureka was surprised to find that even in an open field, she could not see any lower-class spirits. Mel confirmed that weak spirits cannot even speak. Even among the 100 heroes, only a few understood the spirits' language. The prophet could easily learn to talk with them. Eureka became even more interested in that figure. Mel was surprised. A magical reaction happened, but the creature did not appear. The energy spheres froze in one spot. She leaned in and asked Yurik, who had also noticed the strange magical activity. The rustling grew louder until a body began to form from the leaves. Mel didn't expect to see Titan here. Eureka was stunned by a demonic beast with supernatural regeneration and strength. No one could explain how he got here. Sensor readings showed he was over 4 meters tall. Mel suspected he had hidden the body with magic. The director only asked that no one be told he was invisible. Erica said even the god of evil had that magic. It let someone slip past others unnoticed. Mel confirmed the suspicion. It was complex magic only detectable by combining sensory and perceptual magic, and demons lacked that ability. Research shows tyrannical ogres had only earth magic, but this one learned invisibility, so it clearly mutated. Mel explained that if a demon eats the flesh of an evil god, the miasma will force its body to change, and some even gain the god's magic. When her magic revealed him, the creature dropped its invisibility. She realized she had been noticed. The demon turned out to be clever. Belle was terrified. This Titan ogre could learn even more spells from the evil god's flesh. Meanwhile, the ogre lifted sharp stone blocks into the air and fired the crystal cannon. Huge stone fragments struck the building. One crashed through the window where the director and Eureka were, but they managed to jump out. A powerful explosion rocked the building, and it began to collapse. Eureka coughed from the dust and checked that Mel was okay. The president was worried about Mel too because they had jumped from a great height. Mel said only her leg hurt a little. Mel looked at the ruins and realized the attack had been too sudden and too violent. Fortunately, it was her private laboratory, so almost no one went there. The magical barrier warned her about the intrusion. Only she and Eureka were inside, but she worried other buildings might have been damaged. A guard ran up and asked if the president was okay. Mel wanted to be sure everyone already knew about the situation. The woman said she had already warned the guards in every sector. 2 buildings had completely collapsed, and Mel was horrified to learn the assembly hall near the center had been destroyed too. She rushed over to make sure the students were all right. The guard reassured them that Chuki's protective magic kept everyone safe. Those who didn't make it out were trapped under the rubble, but a protective spell created a space to survive, so they will not be crushed. Good news. All the university buildings were reinforced with protective magic. They absorbed blows, turned into shields, and formed temporary shelters under the rubble. Architects designed this together with the mages. Mel knew that if nothing was done, the situation would become critical, and the creature would devour everyone. The guard recognized the monster as a Titan ogre covered in miasma. Mel confirmed it had evolved and could use the magic of an evil deity. It appeared hungry, and the large crowd made the perfect meal. She held a small magical communicator for use around the campus. All the faculty were to rescue and evacuate students, and the guards would distract the ogre. The president ordered a state of emergency in Pioneer City. They had to contact powerful adventurers using magical beacons or letters. Now the priority is to buy time. Mel offered to help Eureka evacuate the students, and Eureka thanked her sincerely. Alchemical medicine was an option, but she refused to leave Mel, since a normal ogre titan needs 10 heroes, and this one was even stronger because of the miasmas. Erica understood there weren't enough people and was ready to fight beside Chuki, but she said Eureka must save herself, because that is her value. The director focused on the rescue and promised the beast would not defeat them easily. The knight reported the signal had been sent. Eureka understood everything clearly, promised to return as soon as possible after the evacuation, and said goodbye. Mel smiled, feeling like her teacher showing off in front of a student. She knew Titan ogres regenerate until their core, the heart, is destroyed. The monster moved closer and prepared to attack again. Footsteps rumbled. The knight approached the president as the security team stood ready. They had to buy time, and Mel warned Titan that he'd have to wait a little. On their way to the university, Aizen and Rin saw smoke in the sky, and Rin pointed at it because it was important. Smoke was rising from the direction of the university. The secretary at first did not believe it was a signal spell, and immediately recognized its color. Aizen asked what was wrong. It was clear the problem was serious. A worried secretary explained that the signal is only used when the guards cannot handle the demon. He immediately stopped the carriage. He turned to the heroes and asked them for a favor. His plan was simple: go back and secure the area. Both had high status in the city, he knew. He asked them to help the university and, if possible, save the president. This place was special to the secretary. He bowed his head and asked the heroes for their support. Aizen smiled. The man was unusually honest. The hero looked at the smiling Rin, and she felt the same. Aizen asked the secretary to look up. He and Rin will definitely help because when friends are in trouble, there is no room for indifference. They sped ahead. The secretary warned the road would be bumpy and apologized for the inconvenience. The carriage rushed ahead, and Aizen thought that if they were late, everything would be lost, so he looked at the secretary and said they would go on alone. The hero made sure Rin was ready, and she answered confidently. Aizen suggested they run on foot because it would be faster. She told the secretary they would leave their things in the carriage. The secretary, stunned, asked what they planned to do. Moments later, both jumped out of the carriage. The hero asked the wind to gently steady them as they landed. Thanks to the magic, they landed easily and sped ahead, overtaking the carriage. Aizen smiled at his student. The wind would help them get there faster. The secretary could hardly believe that the boy not only summoned a tailwind, but could also ride it. Racing at full speed, Rin saw the emergency was still active. Aizen saw it too and urged them to speed up. They were not daring adventurers, but they ran faster than the carriage, and the secretary understood nothing. Eureka coordinated the evacuation, directing people to gather the wounded at the gate and report any places where others were still trapped under the rubble. At the Pioneer City campus branch, she met another student, promised to help, and nearby they found another injured person. A rescuer handed her a list of the students who had been in the hall, and the information was accurate. 37 people have been rescued. 3 remained trapped under the rubble. Eureka knew the president was in the fight now, and she climbed onto the wreckage herself. She called to the students, hoping someone would answer. No one answered. They might have been unconscious or too badly injured to cry out. Even magic detection won't help. There are too many people nearby and the signals blur together. Eureka realized that even among the heroes there was no mage who could reliably locate everyone under the rubble. She realized that as long as even one student remained here, the president would never leave. The young woman looked at the battle with a grim expression, knowing the president had little chance against that monster. Sifting through the wreckage, she wondered what to do. A graduate of this university, she founded the city's best company. Eureka felt she had finally grown up. Tears stung her eyes. The situation seemed hopeless. Failing to save the students would also leave her unable to help her mentor. Holding the shard, she called out for help. A voice answered. Aizen and Rin stood on the rubble in front of her. Eureka, stunned, asked how they had ended up here. Aizen smiled. He was supposed to meet a friend at the university, but other things had come up. She immediately moved to explain the situation, and when she mentioned the ogre titan, Aizen calmly said it was fine. By listening, he had already figured out what was happening around him. Eureka couldn't figure out how he knew everything just by listening, but the boy knew exactly what to do and promised to save everyone as soon as possible. Using hearing magic, the hero moved to a spot in the rubble. "Here, right here," he said. He asked the wind to lift the debris, and as the pieces flew up, an unconscious young man appeared beneath them. The student could not answer. He was unconscious. Aizen leaned over and asked Eureka to look after the wounded. The girl thanked the hero and hurried to help. After that, Aizen found another student and saw the structure was about to collapse, so he had to move very carefully. The hero carefully lifted the debris and found another injured girl beneath it. Eureka was stunned. It happened so fast and two had already been saved. Seeing no spirits, she assumed the hero had not used their power. She had no idea how he knew where to look. Isan remembered hearing voices. They whispered that children were here and needed help. It was a message from the building itself made to protect them. She could not understand how people could hear the voices of ordinary things. Isan said things made with love keep a faint trace of emotion, and he learned to understand that language. The hero heard the voices of memory. They guided him to the last student. He called the wind to lift the debris again, and everyone was stunned when the fragments rose into the air. Another student lay beneath them, barely conscious. A godlike figure formed in the boy's eyes. Isan smiled and said, "I am not a god. I am just a man who came to save you." The young man smiled back, and they pulled him out. Stunned, Eureka realized that finding students so easily felt unreal and that this ability went beyond ordinary spirit communication. The girl remembered the mysterious linguist President Chalk had mentioned and began to suspect who Isan really was. Meanwhile, Rin said the evacuation was complete. Isan gave thanks and said it was time to do the next task. Eureka asked what exactly he meant. The boy smiled and said, "Now it's my turn to meet my student Chalk." Meanwhile, the soldiers, with their last strength, held the monster back. One of them was wounded, so Eureka ran to him and ordered the medics to help immediately. Another fighter tried to strike the enemy's leg, but the ogre easily knocked him back and snapped his sword in two. A female soldier reported that everyone except the president had already been pulled out of the fight. Only a few units were left and the forces were running out. Despite all efforts, the demon's body remained unharmed. Mel realized it was regenerating, a truly nasty opponent. The ogre titan raised his hand and unleashed an icy wave aimed straight at the girl. In response, the president activated a fiery spear spell, and a burning symbol appeared behind her as spears shot out. They were so many that they stopped all the debris. The ogre was puzzled. There were more spears than he expected, and they broke the assault. Fiery spears hit the monster, and it had to raise its arms to block the next blows. The wounds closed immediately. The demon summoned more stone shards. The president saw only a small scratch on his forehead, and even that had already healed. But they had bought time, and the students were safe. A soldier warned the ogre was attacking again, but the president had seen it herself. The girls scattered to the sides, and now Chalk could only guess which one the monster would go after. She noticed the creature was using ice flows to close the distance between them. The monster aimed straight at her, but Mel dodged and again deflected the attack with fiery spears. Seeing the enemy planning something, she fell back further. An ogre suddenly formed a crystal mace and struck the girl with a single swing. The strike hit so hard, Mel barely stayed on her feet, and her big hat fell to the ground. Only the magic shield saved her, and she stood there barely steady, waiting for the next attack. The director realized she couldn't use the shield a second time, so she had to take the blow to the forehead. Shards were already flying toward her. All she could do was hope the students had evacuated in time. For the first time, she felt she could not even protect herself. Being president was hard, but she was proud of how far she'd come. Suddenly, a staff struck the ground in front of her. A man's voice said, "Protect her." The staff began to glow. Mel covered her face with her hands, but the magic barrier saved her. A man stepped forward and said, "You did great holding on to the end." The girl lifted her head and froze. The hero put his hand on her shoulder and said, "You don't need to try to be me. You've already reached great heights." Mel opened her mouth in confusion. She hadn't expected to see her teacher here. Isan smiled and said, "It's been a long time." Despite lacking the strength to fight the monster, she managed brilliantly, helping the surprised girl to her feet. He saw she thought she was dreaming, so he smiled and said, "No, I'm real." A female soldier approached to check the president's condition. Mel smiled and said everything was fine. Isan realized she was the squad leader and entrusted her with the wounded. Rin said she was ready to support the teacher. Isan asked her to help with the evacuation and rescue. The girl agreed. "Leave it to me." Eureka is already brewing a potion in the back, and together they will save everyone. Isan was confident they would handle rescuing the girl. Defeating the enemy was his task. He approached the ogre titan and said, "It's time to begin." His staff had already saved him from ice attacks. He suspected the enemy was preparing something stronger. It seemed to be an intelligent creature. Isan wanted to talk to it, apologize for his words, and ask it to leave. A deafening roar answered. The monster clearly did not understand language. Aisan prepared for battle. He knew exactly what he was doing. Taking a fighting stance, he said, "I'll teach you how to lose." The commander tried to stop him, saying it was too dangerous. Chalk only looked at her in surprise. "That's a mage," the girl said. "He has a staff. Fighting that monster hand to hand would be suicide." Chalk just smiled. "Don't worry, everything will be fine." She knew it was no ordinary staff. The ogre swung a huge club. Aisan stopped the strike with a single sweep of his sword, holding the staff in his other hand. "You're too slow." He commanded his body to activate instant power. In an instant, the monster struck the ogre in the belly, throwing it backward. The commander was stunned. Such speed exceeded even combat augmentation. Mel smiled and said, "Of course, it's the prophet." She confirmed he is their teacher. They learned magic and even hand-to-hand combat from him. He is stronger than all the heroes. Aisan swung and with one blow cut off the enemy's huge arm. The ogre tried to attack with its other arm, sending out an icy wave. Using the storm cleave technique, the hero made all debris instantly shatter into tiny pieces. Aisan sprang forward like lightning and cut off the monster's other arm. The hero realized it was not over yet. He ordered the body to speed up further. The confused ogre barely kept up with his movements. Enraged, the beast tried to back away further to recover. Aisan noticed that constant attacks kept his regeneration from fully restoring his body. He immediately closed the gap and struck again. Although the monster's hand regrew in a few seconds, Aisan was ready, stressing that the key was a penetrating motion. Ogre created a crystal mace in his hand again. Aisan grabbed the sword with both hands, focused his strength, and drove the blade to cut without pause. The strike aimed at the enemy's weak spot. The hero unleashed a magical wave and activated the Judgment of Faith technique. With one swing, he shattered the enemy's mace into small pieces. The magical wave instantly tore open the terrible titan's body before he could even understand what happened. The girls held their breath. The monster's body split in two and with a dull thud fell to the ground. Aisan slid his sword into its sheath as Mel approached. Exactly the outcome she had expected from her teacher. And everyone was impressed that the hero had handled the titan so easily. But Aisan still credited her because she had bought the precious time to save the students. Mel blushed and said he was praising her too much. Aisan refused to give in and achieved her goal by protecting the students. Mel remembered how her teacher had always been like that. He praised her whenever she made an effort. All the students were drawn to him because of that. Memories of their training sessions came back, and she thought it had always been that way. With her head bowed in embarrassment, Mel knew she was being a little selfish, wanting the teacher to praise her again. Aisan had already forgotten, but he remembered her hint and reached out to Chalk. He gently stroked her hair the way she wanted. Mel rested her head on the teacher's shoulder and said, "That's exactly what I wanted." The soldiers around her were stunned. No one could imagine anyone touching the hair of the president herself. She put her hand on his shoulder, thanked him, and felt much better. The hero was relieved, since she no longer seemed to need medical help. After first aid, she felt fine. She had more to say, but amid many thoughts, she chose to speak only the main point. Mel welcomed the teacher back home. Everyone worked to rebuild the world while waiting for him. Aisan smiled. "I'm home, and thanks to you, I can see this wonderful world again." The next day, the global guild buzzed like a beehive. The guild tavern hosted a celebration for their victory over the demon. The administrator said the university and Pioneer City were under threat, so those who saved them must be rewarded. Materials taken from the Titan ogre's body brought the university vast funds and were used to rebuild. They held a banquet to honor the guards who risked their lives. The city celebrated for several days, and when things quieted, Aisan and Rin wrapped up the gathering and left at dawn for the south. Mel felt sad because they were already leaving and she still hadn't thanked Aisan for everything. The hero smiled, having already gathered enough useful items to fill the magic bag. The president wished they could stay a little longer. She wanted to talk to the teacher and Rin-chan too because it had been fun. Rin thanked Mel, and the conversation was pleasant for her too. She already knew what situation Aisan was in. She admitted being shocked that the teacher had not aged at all and even looked younger. The hero said it was all thanks to the spirit emperor who healed him. People once painted Aisan as an old man, so few remember his true face. After the war, many people took his name. Mel thought he would be welcomed as a prophet in any town, but with his current appearance, people might not recognize him. That did not bother the hero. He only wanted to see the world his students had built. The president was delighted and hoped it was true. Isan assured her that she was also one of his excellent students. He was glad he had come here immediately after returning from the spirit world. Mel brightened at his words. Still, she wanted to thank him, so she gave a small token, a certificate from the president of the University of Magic that might come in handy. He confirmed the hero's status as an adventurer and gave him the right to visit most southern towns and places Mel herself could reach. Isan did not immediately believe the document held such power, but she reassured him. The president hesitated to vouch for the teacher because he was much stronger, but she was glad she could at least help a little. She asked where they were going next. The hero replied they were heading south to a trading town where another of his students lived. Mel warned that as soon as he finds out the teacher is coming, there will be a commotion, so it's better not to say anything beforehand. Isan agreed, not wanting to cause trouble. Mel promised she would help keep his identity secret. The university would keep the secret, and she also wanted to prank the Jester King. Garika came up to them at the victory celebration, heard about the trip, and gave Isan a recommendation letter. Only a Kato Daram representative she knew could open the letter. The magical seal would let him know she had written it. In her letter, she explained who Isan was and asked them not to make a fuss. Isan thanked her. Jarika had always been kind to him. Mel shook Rin's hand and left the teacher in her care. Rin promised she could be trusted. Jarika and Mel waved them off and wished them an easy journey. Rin also thanked them for their care and said a warm goodbye. Isan and Rin left the pioneer town Sagittal and headed south, with new adventures and new students ahead. Half a day on the road had passed. Isan was surprised how quickly it went. The view was so beautiful he could hardly look away, and Rin agreed she wasn't even tired. They reached the post town with a few inns and shops. The hero remembered his student, who once wrote that convenient roads are important. He truly did a good job on them. The sun was still high, so Isan decided they could keep going. He told Rin a market town was a bit farther on and wondered how best to get there. Rin thought there was no choice but to walk. The hero remembered a student once wrote that he sold wagons and opened branches in the postal towns. A few years ago, that guy started his own business. The company even rented out wagons. There may be a branch in this town too. Eureka explained that wagon rental stations were set up in postal towns to make trade easier. Even seasoned adventurers could rent a wagon. Isan asked Rena if she was tired and suggested they take a cart, but she thanked him and, smiling, said she wanted to walk this path with her teacher. She clenched her fist to show fatigue is no longer a threat. Thanks to his training, she no longer tires from everyday walking. Rena thought it was much more interesting to walk together. He laughed and agreed. All he wanted was the branch his student had opened. Rena gladly joined him for the walk. They reached the small village and went into the wagon rental office. The door creaked and a man inside greeted them. Isan looked at the contract board and was surprised that all the wagons were already reserved. The seller apologized. The hero wasn't upset. He only wanted to look at the shop. They will walk to the market town. The shopkeeper was genuinely surprised. He warned walking would take a whole day and suggested buying a tent, but the travelers already had one. The seller admitted that these days you rarely meet travelers who are not tied to any organization, especially at that age, and they are truly brave. Isan smiled and thanked him, then wondered if things were really that good, since the student's letter mentioned a lack of clients. The seller explained that the shop is located near a rapidly growing city, so bookings have increased recently. The hero guessed demand increases as the cities grow. Rena suggested they visit nearby cities too to see it with their own eyes. Isan thanked them for the information, said goodbye, and wished them safe travels. Leaving the building, the hero considered what to say to Rena. The atmosphere was pleasant, and his student had built a real community. Rena fully agreed, and the student had learned the importance of good relationships with clients thanks to Isan's guidance. However, the hero insisted it wasn't his achievement but his student's talent, and he was sincerely proud of them. They decided to take a short break at the cafe. Rena was delighted. Sharing lunch with the teacher was a real pleasure for her. They ordered an omelet, as eggs were especially tasty in this region, and there were plenty of coffee shops. Isan expected to reach the trading town by evening. If they pick up a job on the way, they will still make it. He loved night walks under the stars, but it was better to arrive before dark. Rena agreed without hesitation. After resting, they set off and saw a stopped cart by the road. A man tried to lift a unicorn with a horn on its forehead, but the animal would not get up. Isan and Rina came over to ask what happened. The boy in glasses apologized for blocking the way. Not blaming him, the hero simply asked if the cart had broken. The place was dangerous. The boy confirmed that the unicorn refused to move. The merchant couldn't leave the goods, so he asked his partner to go for help. That could take a day. Leaving the cart unattended was also dangerous. Isan looked at the unicorn. It was a peaceful, magical creature, far more resilient than ordinary horses. The animal was clearly sick. The merchant suspected grass poisoning and gave an antidote, but its condition did not improve. The young man hesitated a little but asked permission to examine the unicorn. Isan crouched, touched the animal's muzzle, and asked permission to speak to it. He heard the unicorn's voice. Its right hind leg seemed paralyzed, and he wanted to help his master but could not. The merchant watched in surprise as the boy understood everything. Isan stepped up to the animal's leg. He carefully pulled the small needle out. It was lodged deep in the skin. The moment he pulled it out, the unicorn shuddered and immediately got to its feet. Isan showed the merchant a hedgehog quill. Even removed from the body, it still injected venom. Now that it was removed, they could give the antidote. The merchant thanked them and said it was no problem. They were not far from the post town and did not see any hedgehogs. It was probably a trap because the poison was too strong. Isan threw the needle away. Traders are often attacked by bandits or rivals, but this time it is unclear who wanted to harm them. The merchant poured medicine into a bowl and gave it to the unicorn, which would soon recover. He thanked him again. It seemed Isan knew the magic of words, and the seller was very surprised. The merchant remembered that his colleagues sometimes used similar magic. Spirit magic and prophecy magic are similar, but the first sounds cooler. He had never seen that exact way of using it before. Isan thought it was routine. Most mages control creatures with elemental magic, but talking to them is hard. It is truly a wonder. Isan smiled and said he had traveled a lot and often met various creatures. The war forced him to communicate with people unable to speak because of their wounds, and that sharpened his skills. The unicorn gently touched his hair, appeared pleased, and walked away in a good mood. The merchant was genuinely happy. His animal had been suffering until recently, but now everything was fine. Now that everything is ready, it's time to go. Check the cart itself. You may need a craftsman. Isan touched the cart and asked what was wrong, listening for its voice. He crouched by the wheel axle and saw something there. A piece of metal lay coated in a thin film of liquid. Rina suspected it was a magic potion. Isan confirmed the potion limited movement. It was probably someone else's scheme. The cart could move again, and the seller was glad and thanked once more. He realized the travelers were skilled, because the magic of words over things needs real understanding. They say well-cared-for things have a soul. Isan simply heard it. The merchant grew embarrassed, perhaps only because he truly loved his cart. Isan saw everything was settled and wished them a safe journey. The trader guessed the heroes were heading to the trading city. It was a long journey, and because of the help he had received, he wanted to take them with him since he was going there too. Isan asked if it would be a burden, but the merchant was pleased and said it was the least he could do to repay the help. Such a chance does not come often. Isan looked at Rina, who smiled and said the decision was up to the teacher. The hero accepted the offer and introduced himself with his companion. The merchant, a little embarrassed, introduced himself as Row Harbor from the market town and invited them to get comfortable in the wagon. They covered a long distance quickly despite carrying a lot of cargo. Row explained that it was the company's signature cart, fast and sturdy. Relieved that the heroes fixed the problem, he avoided having to rent a cart in the nearby town, since he could not leave the cargo unattended. Isan was glad he had stayed, especially since all the carts in the city were already booked. Smiling, Row said he was lucky to have met such people. The hero replied that he had helped wholeheartedly and was glad it had come in handy. The unicorn was especially lucky, and Row wondered why it had to be him. Row stood by him at his worst and tried to support him. The animal sensed it. The merchant was embarrassed. Row said the unicorn had been with him from the start of his training, and they were inseparable. Isan remembered the unicorn answering him with trust, and there really is a bond between them. Row agreed. To him it was not just an animal, but a true companion. The unicorn snorted in approval, and Row thanked the others for the conversation. The city was still far, but with such companions he felt calm. Isan smiled and told them not to hesitate to ask if they needed help. The delay left the road almost empty. At this pace, they would make it before dark. The sun was beginning to sink. Suddenly, an overturned cart blocked the road, and it looked like it had hit a tree. No one was nearby. Ro noticed they could get through by slowing down a bit and going around the side. As they drew near, a man in a mask jumped out from under the cart. Jumping onto their cart, he stabbed at the roof with his knife. Ro realized it was an attacker and spurred his horse. The wagon tilted and shot forward, and the bandit couldn't grab on. The man smiled ominously and expected no less from the merchant with their company's emblem. Ro realized he couldn't do it alone and had to run. But the unicorn suddenly fell to the ground again. Ro saw the familiar poisoned needle on his leash. This time the poison worked fast, and even an antidote would not help in time. There was no doubt it was the work of that same bandit, and when everything was ready, he called his men. The horse stopped. The plan worked. The leader tossed the remaining poisoned needles and signaled to advance. A thug with a tail said they had scored another good catch today. Another replied that poison was a brilliant idea. The third man, with a bandage on his forehead, said Ro's cart was full of valuable goods. While threatening them, he demanded everything, including the cargo, the horse, and even their lives. The trader realized there would be no deal. Since he had already ruined their plans, they had no intention of showing mercy. A dagger flew at Ro, and he knew he could not dodge in time. At that moment, Isan whispered a spell and called on the wind to protect the merchant. A wall of wind appeared before Ro and deflected the weapon. The bandits did not understand what had happened, and the hero only noted that things were clearly heating up. Pointing his staff at the attackers, he smiled at Ro and said these negotiators are useless, and they'll handle it from here. One of the bandits pulled out a sword and asked who he was. Seeing the staff, he assumed he was the guard hired for the wagon along the way. Rena stared at the enemies, tense, and asked the teacher what to do. One of the bandits looked at the elven woman with excitement and decided she would fetch a high price on the black market. The hero realized they were still trading slaves. Isan raised his hand and asked them for one thing. The bandit laughed and said he'd spare the mage only if the mage surrendered and let them have their fun. Isan smiled and suggested they surrender to the city watch instead. Silence settled. The leader spat on the ground with a crooked smile. He called them wonderful last words. The bandits laughed. To them, the hero was just a funny guy. One of the leaders brazenly declared that the chatter was over, and as thanks for the good mood, he would give him a quick death. Isan realized talking to them was pointless. Time to act. The bandits assumed it would be easy prey, thinking the boy wouldn't even have time to cast a spell. They pointed their swords at him and laughed. The hero swept his staff, and with one motion put several attackers out of action. One fell at his feet, and the others stood frozen in surprise. It seemed he wasn't using any magic. His movements were far too fast. In fact, Isan had activated acceleration magic. Instantly, he appeared beside each enemy and neutralized them one by one. The bandits did not understand how he did it. Their leader became angry and ordered them to act, not to panic. One of them suggested a different target. Capture the girl. Rena heard everything. She waited calmly until one of them came close and pulled out a dagger. She sidestepped and drove the blade straight into his leg. He screamed, not understanding what had happened. Rena used an electric blade that sent a current through the enemy's body. When the bandit fell, the girl turned and told the teacher she was finished. The hero smiled. His part was finished too. Only one remained. The same man who had threatened Isan with death. He could not accept the defeat and demanded to know who they really were. The hero stepped forward and replied calmly, "Just ordinary travelers." He struck him in the face with his staff. The man fell, and Isan said the robbery had failed, and they were now in the guards' hands. After the fight, the heroes tied up the bandits and put them in the van. Ro, feeling awkward, thanked them again for saving him. The hero told them not to worry. Ro began to suspect that Isan and Rena were not ordinary adventurers. Their strength proved itself, even if it was hard to believe. Isan reinforced the ropes with magic so the criminals could not escape, and decided to hand them over to the guards. Ro agreed. The horse was already better, so they could continue the journey. Ro asked permission to thank them properly once they reached the city. The hero agreed and warned that it was getting dark, so they should be careful. The sun had almost set as their wagon pulled up to the market town of Oleans. The guards saw the bandits and immediately recognized the gang that had been terrorizing the city. A distinctive poisonous substance the gang used gave them away. Rina and Isun received their reward, and the girl was thrilled. The hero had even forgotten that working with security pays. The merchant explained that it was the mayor's and his deputy's policy to pay for security. Rina suggested staying at a hotel, and Isun smiled. Extra money would not hurt. A man approached them, surprised that Ro was already in town because he hadn't even had a chance to send the repairman. Ro greeted David and confirmed he had been helped. David had already heard from the guards that the van was repaired and the robbers neutralized. David looked at the young heroes, adjusted his glasses, and said with admiration that these guys were simply incredible. He bowed and thanked them sincerely for rescuing his friend and the horse. After introducing himself, David promised to do everything he could to repay them properly. Isun said he would have acted the same in that situation. David insisted he had to repay the favor. Ro agreed, saying otherwise one could not consider oneself a worthy traitor. Hearing that the heroes planned to stay, he asked if they had picked a place to sleep for the night. David said he'd already booked apartments for them on Main Street and everything is paid for. Ro praised David for his timely initiative, and Isun thanked him and gladly accepted the invitation because housing like that is rare. David was glad that everything worked out, and Ro was satisfied too. But David felt this was not enough to properly thank for the life that had been saved, so he asked for a little time to do more. As a bonus, he invited them to dinner at his expense. Isun looked at Rina, waiting for her opinion. She said the restaurant was a great choice. David had already booked a table, planning ahead. The group chatted as they went. Isun wanted to leave his things and walk around the city a bit, and Ro kindly agreed to show them around. When Ro entered the apartment, he told them to make themselves at home. They agreed to meet in 2 hours by the entrance since the restaurant was right nearby. Rina's eyes lit up with joy as she saw the spacious room with several beds and even a private bathroom. The hero suggested leaving their things and walking through the nearby streets. They set out on an evening walk through the noisy city that was alive even after sunset. Isun smiled. The city glowed and hummed even at night. Rina noticed something interesting and asked him to look. She pointed to the juice stall and said the city had fruit from different regions, so they should try a mix. He smiled and wanted juice too. Seeing the old watchtower now open to visitors, Isun suggested they climb it. Rina agreed eagerly. At the top, a night view of the city opened before them. He was stunned, and the city was much larger than he remembered. Then Rina realized why the teacher had looked so surprised at the map earlier. He suggested they go down and explore the new neighborhoods. Ro said that beyond the walls there are now mostly residential and shopping districts, and everything is well organized. They arrived at a vacant lot that looked like undeveloped land. A sign stood on the lawn. A sign read, "Caution, future construction site, property of the city administration." The city seemed to keep expanding relentlessly, and Isun liked seeing the infrastructure improve in person because it was harder to sense that from the students' letters. The teacher noticed his staff glowing, and Rina asked what it meant. It turned out he had once left part of his magic nearby. Crossing the clearing toward the forest, they saw the staff glow even brighter and knew the source of the magic was very near. Magic had been stored in the tree. Isun removed the seal, and from the bright light, Oli's energy emerged and entered his book. The hero acquired a level 2 magic boost skill and even forgot he had once left it here. Earlier, he picked remote, deserted spots to seal the magic. He never imagined Olians would grow this much, and he was happy to see his students' work pay off and to stumble on a magical shard. Rina joked that the teacher had probably predicted it all, and Isun smiled and said it was just a pleasant coincidence. The hero suggested they head back, and Rina noted it was already time. She remembered Ro and a friend talking about a restaurant called the House of the White Cat, and it fascinated her. David invited them to eat and drink as much as they wanted, all on his tab. David ordered the most popular dishes from the best restaurant in town. Isun thanked David, and Rina added happily that it was wonderful. Besides the food, there were live performances, songs, dances, and sometimes acrobats. All of it was completely free. Ro clarified that they had reserved a special table with a view not only of the stage, but of the performers themselves. Asking for a favorite song is also allowed. Isun realized this was a truly special place. A professional performer was on stage today, skilled in theater and many musical instruments. Violin notes marked the start of the performance. The musician was still out of sight, but Ison already liked her playing. The hero began to eat and noticed the delicious flavor. Rena tried some too. The spice aroma was incredible and she wanted the recipe. David asked if she liked to cook. Rena said she enjoyed cooking for the teacher and Ison agreed. David was pleased because the city's cooks were the best. He wished them a good meal and stressed that the company wants to thank them for their help. Isona was intrigued by the company's unusual name and asked about its origin. Ro remembered they had not told her they were her founders. Mage David and Trader Ro had created her together. A lot of time has passed since then. The company has brought together many specialists and now offers services ranging from business consulting to metalworking. At first they said they were colleagues, but the protagonist did not realize they were founders. Ro confirmed that different jobs did not stop them from coming together. After learning the truth, David became even more eager to repay the help he had received. They sincerely thanked those who had shown them kindness. It turned out that Ison already knew about the company because his acquaintance Jerika works there. The names astonished the friends. Ro clarified that she was the head of the alchemical garden. Ison showed a letter with her seal. Ro confirmed that Jerika was their friend who helped build the company. David recognized the magic seal that was unique to her. He asked them not to assume they suspected anyone, they just wanted to be sure. As Ro and David read the letter, their smiles turned to surprise and they looked up at Ison. Ro, slightly sweaty, asked again if he was really the prophet Ison, master of the 100 heroes. The boy nodded. Ro had not expected them to find out. The boys were shocked. The legendary hero himself stood before them. David said people even wrote songs about him. Ro admitted he had pictured the prophet as old, wrapped in magic that hid his age. Izon had lived for a long time in a place where time slowed, and he wondered when he had become a legend. Ro adjusted his glasses. You are really well known. I don't know the details, but I've heard a lot about you. David confirmed the stories weren't lies. Even Jericho wouldn't dare to invent such a thing. Few would expect the legendary sage to walk among them like a spy. The guys froze for a moment, and Ro asked David if that could be true. He smiled. The idea had occurred to him too. Turo did not understand, so Ro explained that the artist they were talking about was too famous to show up in such a remote place. She was the one girl among 100 heroes. Surprised, the hero looked at the stage as the wings were just opening. A pulse rose in her chest and nostalgia swept over her. She clutched the violin and hurried away. Suddenly she ran off the stage and rushed to the young man, certain it was him as the hero turned. Throwing herself into his arms, she hugged her favorite teacher with all her strength. The young man smiled. The melody felt familiar, as if the field itself were playing it. The girl replied that it was natural because her master was sitting among the listeners. Ro froze with his mouth open when one of the heroines walked up to them without hesitation, as if it were normal. They were lucky their table was in a private section, so the unexpected scene did not draw extra attention. Fila did not want to let the teacher go because she missed him terribly. Few would have guessed that Fila Dulam was a world-class musician. The protagonist remembered her as quiet and reserved. Pressing against him, she listened to his heart and felt genuine warmth. David thought she seemed quieter during performances. Ro smiled. He and David agreed. Fila finally noticed them and apologized. She could not stay cold in front of the teacher. He apologized for her being emotional and possibly scaring them, but that's how she is, always sincere. The girl said happily that he remembered her name. Izon just raised an eyebrow in surprise, since he couldn't have forgotten his pupil. Hugging him again, she said this was one of her 5 happiest moments. Though the top 3 were, of course, the days he praised her. Rena hesitated, but finally asked the teacher what this enthusiastic girl's name was. The hero introduced Rini Filu Dulem, his student who always tried to make people smile. Fila looked at Rena and realized the girl also had tender feelings for the teacher. She was probably his student too. Rena confirmed that she is the newest of his students and became his follower recently. Fila remembered that Rena sometimes replied to the teacher's letters. A few of them named her, and Rena confirmed it. And Fila said happily that Rena is now her younger sister. Fila admitted Rena looked very cute and that they were both in love with the same person, which made them instant friends, so she offered to be friends and Rena gladly agreed. Vraudold said he had booked a private room to make it quieter and suggested everyone move there. The hero agreed, and the whole group moved together. Ro apologized for the plain room, but the hero told him not to worry and said he was grateful for the care and thoughtfulness. Fila had earlier seen part of a letter that warned revealing Izan's identity was dangerous, so she decided to be quieter. She noticed that the teacher had regained his old appearance. The hero confirmed he had fully recovered and was traveling the world to visit students and learn about new places. Fila was delighted and called it a true coincidence because she also travels to many cities. The girl asked to join the teacher on his journey. Izan remembered that she had once worked in the north, gathering a theater troupe of talented artists. She left the city. In a letter she wrote she wanted to perform all over the world. It seems she never stopped, and the protagonist was glad he remembered her message. His reply was that such colorful letters were impossible to forget. The woman smiled and admitted she had really wanted him to remember her. If they went around Sagittal, it meant they were heading south. Fila was just about to go there. Knowing where some students were, she would gladly help if they took her along. The hero did not object and asked Rina for her opinion. She only smiled, ready to accept any decision he made. The boy guessed that Fila had her own purpose for the trip, and if it didn't conflict with their plans, they would gladly take her along. Fila said it was the other way around. Being near her teacher inspires her, and that is the most precious thing for art. That was why she was so eager to go with the teacher and Rina. Izan looked at Rina, and she nodded in agreement. The young man confirmed, so they will leave soon. Fila beamed with joy, thanked the teacher for the decision, and promised to do her best. Ro noticed the conversation had ended and suggested returning to dinner. Izan agreed, saying they should properly celebrate meeting an old friend and drink to the reunion. Fila hugged Rina and suggested they sleep together. She already wanted to whisper about the teacher, and Rina did not object. The hero was happy they were getting along. David pulled the hero aside for a moment, saying he had forgotten to tell them something important and asking to join their journey because he had information about another hero from the trading city. The hero guessed it was about Mesha. Izan didn't know Flood would be here and at first went to meet the mayor. David said the mayor is a busy man and rarely in town. He would like to help with the investigation by finding out where the person is and passing on that information. If possible, Izan should visit the company's office tomorrow. The hero thanked David and promised to come. David wished everyone a good night and said goodbye. Ro and David returned to the headquarters of the company doors to the magic of words. They went up to the 4th floor to the supervisor's office. Ro sat down in the chair. David sighed heavily, noting the day had been full. Ro took off his glasses and agreed that the van broke down. Bandits attacked them, but everything was all right. He had no idea he would meet the prophet Izan himself, the legend of his childhood. David nodded, and they became friends before they learned who he really was. The hero was also a co-founder of the Doors of Magic Words. They dropped formalities and saw each other as they truly were, proving Izan was trustworthy. That mattered a lot to the merchant. David wanted to reply in the same way and suggested starting to collect information now. He said the city administration's reception should also be open at night. Although the matter is not urgent, as representatives of a large company, they have a chance to be heard. Ro opened the door. They were going to the management office first, but David stopped him. The deputy mayor wanted to give them a task. It might be dangerous, but it was worth trying. Ro agreed. It would be a good chance to start the search. A generous dinner restored their strength, and the men were ready to work through the night. In the morning, the protagonist went to the central office of the company, Doors to the Magic of Words, looked at the large building and said, "I'm here." It was still early, but a crowd had already gathered. That meant the rumors about the company's success were true. Izan remembered he had to go to the reception desk. Wishing the girl good morning, he politely asked permission to ask a question. She asked what business he had come for. Izan gave his name and said he had a meeting with Ro and David. The woman asked whether he meant the director. The man confirmed and said he had been personally invited. She apologized for the misunderstanding. Before she could ask anything, a man's voice cut her off, calling Izona. David had guessed Izan was already there and had come to meet him in person, and the girl was surprised that Mr. David knew him and apologized for the cold reception. David said not to worry. He hadn't told the staff in advance. Izan owes him, and next time David will meet him with proper respect. Everyone in the office immediately wondered who the guest could be since the director himself had come out to meet him. They were also heading to the meeting room. and people whispered about who he was because the boss called him a debtor. The receptionist hesitated. She had thought she knew all the influential guests, but now she was curious about Mr. Ison's true identity. Climbing the stairs, David apologized, admitting he had hidden Izon's status from the staff. The hero said everything was fine. Caution is useful. David joked that he had no companions with him. It turned out the girls had talked all night and were still fast asleep. They reached the 3rd floor where the main meeting hall was. David warned that besides Ro, another man would be there with information about the mayor. The hero did not object. The man opened the door and invited Izon inside. Ro and another mustached gentleman greeted them, and the other introduced himself as Woods, the deputy mayor of the merchant town. He was genuinely pleased to meet the respected Mr. Izon. Izon replied politely and thanked him for his time. David added that Woods was a trustworthy man. David explained everything to him, and the other insisted on a personal meeting. The city prospered because of the mayor's decisive actions, and the mayor had heard much about Izon, which he considered an honor. Woods said if the mayor had known about the visit, he would have postponed all his business, then thanked him for coming quietly, and added that the mayor always said Izon cares for others, and the hero blushed because he had only thought it would be better that way. The mayor is not here right now. He has gone to the neighboring town and will be back in a week or two. Now they have someone who will let them know as soon as he returns so they can set up a meeting. Izon thanked David, Ro, and Mr. Woods for their support. Mr. Woods asked not to be thanked and wanted to know whether the hero had any plans after the meeting. He replied that it was nothing special. Woods wanted to ask a favor, relying on his abilities. The plan was to use prophetic power to learn the truth from the criminal without violence. Izon asked whether Mr. Woods fully understood what he could do, and Mr. Woods assured him he did, saying he was more than just an official. He reminded them that trading cities have special farms where harmless demonic beasts are raised. The hero remembered taming. Tamers had long made contracts with demonic creatures. He practiced it himself, though the field was still undeveloped. An urgent message came from one of those farms. The animals are out of control and the barriers are not working. The hero realized Woods wanted him to stop the creatures without hurting them. I was right. These animals are very valuable, so they must not be killed. David usually handled these jobs, but they were short of specialists now, so he assumed Rena and Fila would join him, and he was glad because their talent was worth hundreds of people. Izon agreed to carry out the request, since he was going to be in the city for a while. They shook hands. The hero thanked him, and Woods admitted the help was very valuable. The reward will be well deserved. Once they agreed, the hero urged them to start immediately. Woods promised to give the map, and they would learn the rest on site. Izon asked if he could pick up his students first. David said everything was ready, and they were waiting in the reception. David opened the door and said he would escort them. When they stepped outside, Ro told Woods he was surprised Izon agreed so quickly to the unexpected request. Woods agreed. He was surprised, too. Not expecting such openness, he found seeing the prophet in person already an event, and the reaction made it even more striking. Among the 100 heroes, including the mayor, many were friendly. Ro believed this was due to Izon's influence. The mayor had a strong character that shaped the city's atmosphere and may have learned it from the prophet, too. Ro asked Woods to sit down and made tea. He guessed Woods had another task, and was right. It was a request from an intermediary company. These organizations work with the city, and even small assignments pay well. Their company is one of the first the city trusts. This mission was not easy. The mission was high risk. On the outskirts of town stood a large estate where a man known as a scholar lived. Lately, something strange had been happening there. Since the start of the year, he had not spoken to anyone and kept to himself. Sometimes people only came to bring him provisions. Ro suspected the scientist had become absorbed in his research, which could be the problem. Later, he began asking visitors whether they wanted to learn about the power of the Dark God. Ro agreed, nothing good will come of it. Many sought the Dark God's power during the war, and secret orders still pursue it. After receiving alarming information, the city wanted to send soldiers immediately, but the frightened residents' testimony made it clear that an open investigation would scare anyone who might be connected to the order. Tom Woods asked Ro to run a covert investigation under the guise of a supply delivery. They needed to slip into the estate and gather information. This required a mage, with a special gift, the ability to tell which items were tainted by evil energy, and only one person had that gift, a resident of the ruins. This was called the magic eye, an ability given by the pink pupil. It let him see energy by its color. It let him sense evil forces in things. That skill was very useful and not just for trading. Even so, it required a lot of focus. If there was little evil energy, it was hard to detect. Ro still hadn't recovered from the bandit attack. He still hoped to be useful. Woods agreed. He remembered that Ro had experience with these jobs, so a hazard bonus would be added to the usual pay. Ro confirmed he was used to risk and agreed to the task. They could not delay with the dark god. Rina and Fila met the hero on the street. Rina felt he had accepted the mission, and of course they would go together. Fila asked not to be left behind, even though she had joined only yesterday. The hero gladly agreed and suggested returning to the company. At headquarters, they announced it to everyone, drawing widespread attention. People wanted to know who those companions were. David said they helped a lot. Some recognized Fila, the same musician and heroine. It was hard to believe she was going with them. One of the men said her music boosts abilities and movement. Conversation turned to the performance they had heard earlier, which had been enchanting, and people thanked her sincerely. The hero felt respect for the 100 heroes and was glad for his students. Some doubted they could handle the dangerous task. The matter was complicated, and the men looked fragile despite their strong build. One acquaintance replied that their leader had brought them himself, so everything would be fine. David did not repeat himself. They accepted his advice. Doubting would be an insult. He asked everyone to check their gear. Everyone immediately got to work. The hero noted that David was a good leader, and people respected him. David smiled and said he was far from being a teacher of 100 heroes. David apologized for his subordinates and asked them not to mind. Soon everyone confirmed they were ready. David praised their quick response. It was time to leave. Their group arrived at a farm on the outskirts of town under the blazing sun. A man in farm clothes met them, saying he had heard the company had taken on the task and was grateful for their quick arrival. The hero guessed correctly. A farm worker stood before him. The man greeted Izon because the mayor had said he would arrive. They were tasked with calming the enraged beasts. The boys looked up at the barn roof as 3 creatures ran straight toward them. These were sheep with smooth, shiny wool and massive horns. One of them easily broke the wooden fence and escaped. Izon recognized the metal sheep because he had dealt with them before. The farmer explained that when the sheep got agitated, their wool and horns became metallic. You could see the fence being torn apart. The metal fence still held, but it was only a matter of time. They are usually calm, but something set them off and now they can't be calmed. The farmer pointed to a building surrounded by barriers. Sheep can be herded there until they settle. Instead, the hero suggested finding the cause of the aggression and removing it. The farmer supported the plan. David had no doubt they could try to tame the creatures with their powers. He asked how many metal sheep there were in all. The mayor says there are 104. These are very precious creatures and people are attached to them. We must act before disaster happens. They agreed and promised to treat the sheep more gently. David suggested to Izon they test the power to influence, and the hero agreed. A herd was approaching. Concentrating, David activated domination magic. A wave of magic spread across the field and the sheep stopped right in front of him. One of the men told Izon this was not enough, since the magic held them but did not solve everything. David agreed it wouldn't fix the problem, but at least no one would be hurt. So he suggested herding the sheep back behind the fence. David told everyone to form groups of 3 and catch 1 sheep from each row. Everyone jumped into the task at once. Izon decided it was time for them to join in. Fila said it was a team task, so she would give it her all. Rina did not want to let the teacher down and suggested they split up. She would go with Philo, and the teacher would go separately. Izon agreed. Fila laughed and asked Rina to rely on her as the senior student because her help would be invaluable. Rina thanked her for the trust. The hero decided to go to the right, and Fila asked the teacher to watch from the side as she handled it. One of the metal sheep lunged at Rina. Killing was not an option. Hypnosis was weak in that state. An idea came to her. At the last second, Rina dodged and pulled out her deck. A sheep ran by, stopped, and collapsed moments later. Rina used a magic kick. The method was rough, but it worked. She whispered to the sheep to sleep peacefully. Fila was surprised. She hadn't expected Rena to be able to put her to sleep with a sword. The girl pulled out a violin. Her turn had come to show what she could do. Rena apologized for asking, but was genuinely curious where the violin had come from. David was delighted. The girls had already caught a sheep. He expected nothing less from Mrs. Rin. She simply smiled and thanked him. She glanced at David, who only looked awkwardly at his men, who still couldn't handle even one sheep. 2 men tried in vain to hold a sheep. Their words had no effect. One begged his friend to hold on and called for help. The sheep got loose and must be caught before it runs off. David could not believe even experienced fighters could not handle these creatures. It was clear the men were holding them down by force but were getting exhausted, and this was costing time. So David hoped the word mages, the fighters, and those used to close combat would cope. Fila smiled and offered to help with performance magic, saying her music would boost their abilities. David thanked Mrs. Doolam if that was not too much trouble for her. Rena still couldn't calm down, eager to know where Fila hid the violin, maybe in the bag that absorbs magic. But the girl only gave a knowing smile. She promised to reveal the secret later, but right now getting it done matters more. Not wanting to disturb the word mages, Fila decided to just play and immediately began. She had just started, and the music filled the field. The men straining to hold back the sheep paused briefly, forgetting their tiredness. No one could explain the magical melody that warmed the body from within. Everyone began to notice the power was returning, and now everything will work out. The wife pulled herself together again, and one of the workers urged everyone to stay strong. At last, the sheep settled. This was exactly what David expected from the student who had trained 100 heroes. David praised Fila. Her music lifted everyone's spirits. Fila smiled and said she liked seeing everyone work with a smile. Suddenly, a hum came from behind, and the heroes turned around in surprise. One of the giant metal sheep still wouldn't obey as it charged straight at a worker. Fila noticed the animal was outside the range of her enhancement, so the magic didn't work. Rena lunged forward, but Fila stopped her, saying everything was under control, and Rena remained confused. With the situation critical, Fila acted differently and reached out to activate the starting magic. Her right hand shot out at the sheep and stunned it. The animal fell to the ground. Rena was stunned as her hand moved on its own. Fila remembered that only the teacher knew about Rena's race. Rena was an automaton who could take her body apart and put it back together with magic. Rena felt awkward. It was the first time she had seen anything like it. They told her this race was extremely rare. The origin of the automatons is unknown. They appear human, but are extremely rare and little is known about them. Even the social science textbooks Rena read on her teacher's advice mentioned them only briefly, and David was impressed. Rena knew the teacher had covered different races, but she was still surprised. Fila not only plays in sync, she literally figures things out. Blushing, Fila admitted it felt good to be praised. Her desire to act flared up again. The girl reached out her left hand and pushed it forward. A hand shot toward the boys trying to stop another sheep. They feared the fence would not hold. Suddenly, someone grabbed the sheep by the head and knocked it to the ground. Fila admitted she can launch not only her hands but other body parts as well. The men froze. A single hand of the girl stopped a sheep they could not hold together, and she was an automaton. Before them stood the pupil of the hero who had trained 100. Fila waved and said their teacher was far more amazing. His power had nothing to do with race, and she only gave him a look. Izan stood in the middle of the field, having tamed the whole herd and looking like a true shepherd calling the sheep. Surprised, David and the girls ran up to him. He said calmly that he had already gathered most of the sheep. David couldn't understand how he had done it, because the sheep's wool had turned white and the animals were nervous. The hero only smiled. "I just talked to them." David could not believe words would calm them because they were too agitated. Their conversation was cut short when the boys shouted, and one of the rams broke free and charged straight at Izan. David recognized him as the leader, the strongest man he had ever seen, and warned the hero right away that they had to run. Ixon just smiled and said he would handle it, then asked David to take the others away so they would not get in the way. A dull rumble of hooves grew nearer. The hero saw a ram charging toward him with friendly intent. Izan decided he had to try to stop it. David froze, not understanding why Ison put his staff on the ground. "What are you planning?" Izan stood up and said, "Slow it down first, otherwise it's dangerous." As the metal leader approached, the hero reached out his hands. Grabbing the ram by its massive horns, he threw it over himself. Izan smiled, looked at him, and said, "Look at the blue sky." He gently laid him on his back. Everyone froze. David and the others couldn't believe the hero flipped a metal ram that weighed as much as a solid ingot of Ingrid. Apparently, the lead ram was not hurt at all. He just fell to the ground. David confirmed the ram had simply flipped over and suffered no harm. Phila smiled as she approached the stunned man. That was the teacher's fighting style. David laughed, but when he saw it with his own eyes, he realized how frightening it was. Even experienced warriors did not have those moves. Phila said it was natural because the master had taught them their fighting art. She was sure Rena had picked up some of it from him too. Rena confirmed she wanted to learn more, but so far, Master Izan had only been teaching her self-defense. David laughed nervously, picturing her strikes as mere defense. He watched Izan with admiration, the true teacher of heroes. Meanwhile, the hero spoke to the whole herd and urged them to calm down. The animals looked at him in surprise because he had defeated their leader. Izan smiled softly and said, "Calm down, listen to me and stop." With those words, the hero released the magic of his voice that enveloped the whole flock. The sheep stood still, as if they listened and understood. Everyone watching was stunned. Izan calmed so many sheep at once, and they really fell silent. Stunned, David stepped closer and said, "Mr. Izan, what did you just do?" The hero was surprised because he had only been speaking and putting magic into his words. David thought it was a joke. He had been talking to the sheep for a long time, but word magic is usually brief. Long phrases use more magic and are harder to control. Even simple phrases require careful limits on power. A typical master should use no more than 2 phrases. Only a true prophet can speak for a long time and stay in control. The hero calmly told David that all the sheep in the flock had already been gathered. David confirmed it, went after the correlators, and Izan thanked him sincerely. Meanwhile, the hero was about to ask the sheep what had alarmed them, and David hoped for an answer, because Izan could talk to magical creatures. Meanwhile, Ro and this team arrived at the manor on the outskirts of the market town. They all posed as cargo handlers but were actually undercover soldiers linked to Zamoris. They had to sneak into the house and scout it. If necessary, detain the researcher, and if danger arose, protect Ro. The group came to the door and knocked 4 times, then 3. It was the prearranged signal the previous trader had mentioned. Ro smiled and wished the owner a good day. He said he represented a wholesale food company and delivered provisions. The door opened a crack and a quirky scientist peered through. Everything happened just as they'd been told. Ro pretended not to know and asked if this was the owner of the estate. The man agreed but pointed out that Ro was not the same person who had come before. He asked where the previous merchant had gone. Ro replied that the person fell ill and could not work, but insisted the delivery go out today and sent an apology letter and a confirmation document in case anyone wants to check. The owner grabbed the papers, scanned them quickly, recognized the handwriting, and realized the document was genuine. He admitted they were really short of food. When he let them in, Ro thanked him. Then he ordered his men to bring in provisions. The owner led them into the messy room, ordered them to leave everything there and to go immediately. Ro grew wary. According to the information, the cargo was meant to stay in the corridor, yet they were taken deeper inside and the room was completely sealed. He adjusted his glasses and paused. The windows he'd seen were boarded up. Something felt wrong. For now, it was hard to tell which side this old man was on. One of the boys approached him. Ro said they had just gotten rid of the extra eyes. Ro activated the demon choice eye and began to scan the room carefully. It seemed there was a hidden door in the wall, and Ro guessed it would open if enough magic was poured into it. One of the men asked Mr. Ro whether they could open it. If anything goes wrong, the city administration is responsible. Ro decided to open it himself. It would be a shame if it turned out there was nothing behind it. Pressing against the wall, he poured in magical energy. The doors opened slowly. The boys smiled. This was exactly what they expected. Mr. Ro said he had handled similar mechanisms before. Their faces changed instantly when the door opened to a terrifying sight, and the boys' cheeks went pale as squeals and crunching came from the room. Inside lay a human skeleton and the mangled body of a metal sheep. A huge wolf sat nearby, tearing at the meat. Ro and the others realized they had seen something they were not meant to see. The group froze in terror at the entrance to a grim corridor. A saddle wolf was devouring an already dead sheep. In the corner lay human bones and body parts. One of the boys warned Ro that this magical creature was dangerous. Ro guessed the wolf had become like that after it ate the transformed metal sheep. Ro found a torn collar with an address on the animal. Another member of this group spotted human bones in the left corner. Ro recognized the collar as belonging to an old acquaintance, and the sheep had come from his farm. A mad scientist stepped out of the dark corridor holding a lantern and began to mutter that the food was unnecessary. Ro figured out this room connects to others. They have confirmed the illegal keeping of magical creatures. We need to catch the culprit. Ro decided to check if there really were metal sheep and human remains here. He pointed, but the scientist assumed it meant feed and that everything was fine. Ro was surprised when the man called the remains food. The scientist grabbed his head and said it was hard to carry the sheep alone. He fed them properly at first, then realized people were easier to bring, thinking problems were his main enemy. The group looked at him as if he were insane. The scientist leaned toward his wolf as it finished eating the sheep. With a mad gleam in his eyes, he said that if there was no more food, there would not be enough mana for that sweet girl, and he ordered the wolf to eat the people. The creature pricked up its ears and stared at them. The scholar said, "Food has arrived." The old man said it was time to have fun, and the wolf leaped onto the roof. Ro threw a paper with the magic symbol and activated a shield. The paper lit up and became a heavy wooden board that stopped the attack. Ro praised himself for his spare magical tools and ordered his people to act. The men pulled out weapons hidden in household items and prepared for battle. While the wolf scratched the shield, 2 men tried to attack it. One was shocked. The animal's fur was as hard as stone. The second, holding a heavy hammer, told everyone to step back and struck the beast. The blow hit the wolf's head squarely. It fell but was still alive, clearly made of pure magic. A young man noticed the beast even scratched Ro's strong magic shield. Its power was terrifying. But the researcher disappeared. Ro pointed into the dark corridor and watched the scholar flee deeper inside. The scholar would be little use in a fight, so Ro decided to look for another solution. They walked down the corridor and reached the heavy doors, where the same scientist might be hiding. They weren't sure what to do, and since the crime was confirmed, it seemed best to go back and inform the authorities. It would be safer. Nobody knows how many wolves are here. Ro agreed if they could get out. The group with the merchant reached the door they had come through, but it did not open because it was sealed by magic. Ro scanned the walls. Barriers protected them from damage and magical interference. They were sealed. That left only one option: catch the culprit. Meanwhile, Isan and the others were at a country farm. The farmer admitted he had not expected them to finish so quickly, but that was exactly what he expected from the doors to the magic of words. David said the credit belonged not to them, but to Mr. Isan and his companions. The farmer was surprised to learn the hero talked to metal sheep. He did not know the hero could speak with magical creatures and had only heard Samur's excited stories about Isan. The farmer wanted to know more about his identity, but David, like Zamur, said nothing. Seeking confirmation that the task was completed in full, he said he was ready to pay generously. David thanked them for the reward and asked that it be passed to Izan. They walked to the field where the hero was still talking to the sheep, and David called him over, saying he had brought the workers. But the hero seemed worried. David noticed right away. Izan asked the farmer several questions. The farmer was surprised but listened. Izan asked if there should be exactly 100 metal sheep here. The farmer confirmed 100 with no deviations. It was one of the basic rules of management. Izan said there were only about 80 here. The farmer remembered that 15 were still in the other field. That meant 5 were missing. David looked around and no one else was in sight. The hero noted that Phil, Rin, and the word mages combed the whole area but found nothing. The fence is intact and sheep do not jump that high. He asked cautiously if any of the servants could have gotten rid of the animals. The farmer immediately said no. His workers took good care of the animals. Isan then concluded it was someone outside, because all the sheep had told him that they were kidnapped, eaten, and stolen. David did not understand what he meant. The hero explained that when he put together what the animals said, it showed the kidnappings had come from inside. They regretted that this would ruin the work of the kind people who fed them, but they were afraid. The farmer asked again whether the sheep had not meant to hurt people. Izan confirmed. On the contrary, they were grateful. This moved the farmer. He smiled, glad they had formed a real bond. That is why he could not let anyone steal them and wanted to know who. Izan replied. The sheep described a monster-like man who seemed driven to kill. They wanted to get as far away as possible. The sound came from the town. David thought it might be a magical creature. The farmer had never heard of anything like that there. Izan asked the sheep to hold on until the threat was gone, and they promised to try. In any case, David suggested they focus on the thief. Even one sheep is hard to carry. It takes at least 2 people. Maybe the animals had seen a sign or a clue. Izan tried to find that out. He mentally asked if anyone had seen the theft, and one sheep said she had. The madman told them, "Be grateful that you will become food for a creature that feeds on demons." Believing in his perfect method, he simply grabbed one. Everyone was impressed. That was exactly how the sheep described it. The hero repeated their words. David couldn't believe it at first. It turned out someone in the city was feeding the creature demonic meat. A rumble filled the air. David thought it was an explosion. Izan turned, and the sound was clearly coming from the city. Meanwhile, the group and the merchant were at the scientist's estate. One of the men went to the door and warned the others that he was about to open it. Ro asked for caution. Ro saw no magical traps, but ordinary ones might be hidden. The man opened the door carefully. A scholar stood before them and told them not to be afraid and to come inside. The room was tiny, with only a table. A scientist stood inside a makeshift magic circle marked by a pentagram. He assumed the men had killed the wolf. It had been strong in attack but stupid, so killing it was easy. The scientist stated calmly, "That phantom wolf was made from mana, and he can make dozens more like it. He does not care about losses." However, the old man really did not understand why Ro and the others had come. It turned out he had simply forgotten to ask earlier. The merchant said they were here to talk about the research. If his actions threaten the city, the mayor's forces must stop him. They have already witnessed crimes. Guessing the cause was feeding or raising a wolf, the scientist concluded the men had come to impose absurd laws by force. That suited him because his work was already finished. Smiling, he said he had finished the cultivation and needed nothing more. One of the team suggested arresting him at once, but Ro stopped him because the magic eye revealed something strange in the wall behind the scientist. Without leaving the magic circle, the old man turned to the wall and suggested they go there. He dispelled the illusion hiding the passage. He declared he would not flee and said it was absurd. Ro stopped everyone. "Hold on, there's something behind this wall." A giant 3-headed wolf stands right behind the scientist in the dark corridor. Several men gasped and called it a monster. Another said the black mist around it could not be a coincidence. Ro stared at the beast in horror, and he did not know what kind of creature it was. The scientist laughed. "That's why you are fools. This is not an ordinary wolf. After devouring the flesh of an evil god, it evolved into the abyssal Fenrir." Ro was furious that the creature was dangerous for the entire city, but the old man only sighed and admitted he had raised it. No one understood what was happening. The scientist turned to Fenrir and asked to merge with his beautiful essence. The giant beast swallowed him instantly. It seemed like suicide. Ro used a magic eye and saw that it was not the end. The scholar was not simply eaten. He merged with Fenrir. Laughing, Fenrir said the merger was complete. At last the madman felt the beast's body consuming divine power. The boys stood in stunned silence. The voice coming from Fenrir was the scientist's, and no one understood how that was possible. The young warriors had no idea what merging with a magical being was. That technique had been considered lost after the war with the evil god. Fenrir bared his teeth and said, "It's pure pleasure to watch you from above. You're all fools." The fusion technique had been forgotten long ago and could not be brought back. Ro could not understand how he had used it. It was clear he had fully transferred his consciousness into the beast's body. Fenrir laughed. "This isn't just a merge, it's evolution. Idiots like you can't understand it." The wolf's central head lifted into the light and said, "I finally understood my master. This is all real." One of the boys looked at him in horror and asked, "What are you doing?" Fenrir thought the boy did not hear his words. Apparently, only Fenrir himself could hear his master's voice. People did not understand what the monster was saying. The monster decided to destroy the city and humanity. The master's voice kept repeating, "Kill and destroy." Fenrir activated his magic and summoned the shadow wolves. A whole pack of dark matter creatures appeared beside him. Ro shouted, "There are too many of them! Fall back!" Fenrir just laughed, threatened to destroy them, then opened his mouth and breathed fire. Ro saw Fenrir gathering an enormous amount of mana, and knew that if he fired, it would be a disaster. The wolf fired a giant mana ball at him. Meanwhile, two guys waited by the mansion, puzzled that their friends had not come out for a long time. One suggested ignoring the guard and going inside. They had barely taken a step when a powerful explosion thundered around them. The blast was so powerful it destroyed the entire house behind it. People rushed out of their homes. No one knew what had happened. A crowd quickly gathered at the mansion. The men waiting outside could not believe their eyes. One of them suggested they stop posing as merchants and take up arms. Ro came out of the burning house covered in soot. One of the boys ran up to him and asked what had happened. A frightened merchant warned that a pack of magical wolves was approaching. The residents had to be evacuated immediately, but those present did not understand what he was saying. Ro raised his hands and told the people to run. One man thanked him, saying that without him they would all have died. He smiled awkwardly and remembered activating the magic shield. Because of the sharp angle, the shield failed to stop the blow, but it deflected it back. One of the warriors suggested Ro leave the battlefield, but Ro refused. Ro reminded them it was the monster's breath. It completely ignored the wall's protective magic. They needed a real magical shield. Adjusting his glasses, Ro said, "I will fight you." As the men discussed their plan, a pack of wolves appeared on the horizon and closed in quickly. The bandaged man shouted it was time to bring out the heavy weapons from the wagon and ordered everyone to pair up. Fenrir himself emerged from a cloud of smoke. A massive beast clumsily climbed onto the roof of the burning mansion and laughed. The scientist was not yet used to his new body. Some parts felt numb, but he liked its majestic form. He threatened to erase everything, especially this pitiful city built by humans. The first victims were meant to be those most likely to panic. Small wolves charged the fighters. The leader ordered them to hold their ground until reinforcements arrived. The boys agreed they could win, but Fenrir activated the technique to summon shadow wolves again. Ro and the others were scared when animals started appearing in every alley of the city. Fenrir said with a grin, "I can summon many of them. Show me how much you can endure." Someone shouted that the wolves were multiplying. Ro encouraged the team, saying it was not all lost yet, and the players rallied behind him. A huge swarm rushed at them, and the fight erupted with new force. Fatigue closed in faster. It felt like only an hour had passed, but they had almost no strength left. The army was far away, and no one knew when it would end. Fenrir attacked again with his fearsome thunder breath, and Ro managed to raise his shield. The strike was so powerful it broke through the defense and hit everyone with a bolt of lightning. Ro's neighbor rushed to him. Adjusting his glasses, the man said it had only grazed him. The magic was too strong, and mana gathered again in Fenrir's maw. The merchant had only 2 spells left, and the situation was getting worse fast. Ro began to lose strength and slumped to the ground. One of the warriors ran to him and begged him to hold on, saying Ro was not a warrior. But Ro knew that if he gave up now, he would be a different person later. Someone tried to destroy their city, their home, and their lives right before their eyes. Ro looked at the man and said he loves this city, so they'll give everything to fight for him to the very end. Fenrir felt everything was going perfectly and had almost gotten used to his new body, so he ordered the pack to end the game. He glared at the shadow wolves. It was time to get serious. Everyone moved together now. The pack attacked the people with renewed strength, and Fenrir jumped onto the roof again, scanning the area. Ro looked up and saw the wolf scientist plotting something. He realized the other wanted both heads to exhale at once across the entire city. The merchant tossed 2 sheets with magical seals into the air, and they scattered in opposite directions. Fenrir smiled slyly and unleashed both ice and thunder breath at once. It was too powerful. Ro barely held the shields, and Fenrir looked down as if to say, "You are wasting your effort." Ro was about to celebrate saving the city when a wounded wolf's body fell on him. He didn't expect the blow, fell, and as soon as he got up, another jumped at him. At that moment, the merchant realized his protection was gone, but he gritted his teeth and prepared to fight. Clenching his fist, He shouted that he would fight to the end. A voice called those words revolutionary. At that moment, Aeson appeared behind him and struck the wolf with his staff. Ro looked up in surprise, not expecting to see Aeson here. His team arrived with them, and the girls arrived on time too. Fenrir immediately noticed reinforcements. Aeson helped Ro to his feet, and Ro thanked him. Aeson smiled. Someone had been pleading to be saved first. Ro glanced back as David ran toward them at full speed. David was glad they'd arrived on time, but Ro did not understand why they were here. David explained that as soon as he felt something strange, he turned back immediately and during the fight heard Mr. Aeson's voice. Aeson asked Ro to explain what was happening, but Ro did not know where to start. He discovered that a scholar lived here who studied divine evil and had raised a huge evil wolf. The wolf then ate the scholar and merged with him. Aeson and David exchanged looks. A dangerous criminal like that was hard to find. Fenrir himself did not understand why it felt so unpleasant to look at Aeson. When everything fell into place, the hero announced the plan. Ro and the warriors would retreat, and he would face Fenrir. Fila asked to be left with it, and Renee agreed. They will cover the retreat, Aeson agreed. No one knows whether this will end in peace or in death. He will fight for this city to the end. Rin stepped up to the group and told everyone to fall back. They can handle it from here. The man froze because he did not want to leave the battlefield. Meanwhile, Fenrir ordered the packs to attack so they could not escape. The girl readied herself for battle, and Fila, standing nearby, asked Rin to take the people to safety. She would deal with the wolves herself. Fila warned she would not tolerate anyone who interfered with the master's plan, and Rin could not see how that violin would help in battle since the wolves were already very close. Fila simply smiled. The violin was not an instrument at all. She swung it, and with one blow tore the wolf open. Fila did not want to soil it because she usually used it as a bow. Her hand held a rapier that only looked like a violin bow. Raising the instrument, she ordered the orchestra to form a magical shape. The violin flared and began to change. It turned into a cannon that covered Fila's whole arm. Rin was shocked. She had recreated the weapon on the spot. Fila explained simply, she is an automaton and her body is covered with hidden weapons. As wolves closed in, Fila unleashed a burst of magical fire that destroyed several at once. Rin said with delight that it was incredible. Fila agreed, admitting this ability makes people uneasy, so she hides it as a tool. Rin feels the weight of knowing her secret. Looking serious, Fila asked if it was scary. The girl lowered her eyes, hesitating. Then her eyes lit up and it was amazing. Fila was surprised by the answer because another of her students said the same. Praise from the master made her happy and gave her strength to protect others. Rin remembered the sensei's words that everything comes true. Fila was glad the teacher noticed her and even patted her head. Those were not grand words, but they still mattered if they helped protect people's smiles. Raising her hand, she signaled to continue with a technique from her orchestra, ordered the wolves to listen, and then fired. At that moment, Aeson stood on the roof with the three-headed Fenrir. The monster called him a fool. A voice in his head said, Aeson is one of those who once destroyed their lord and banished the gods. Fenrir recognized the prophet Aeson standing before him. Aeson said he had never met them. The monster sensed the master's hatred in his blood and flesh and decided to devour him. Fenrir attacked with a fearsome thunder breath. Aeson clenched his teeth, not wanting to see this city destroyed again. He raised his staff and told it to absorb the blow. Then he ordered a burst of energy in response like a beast's roar. The staff flared and Fenrir only sneered. To the monster's surprise, nothing broke. The staff absorbed everything, and Aeson did not even flinch. Fenrir could not understand how the hero withstood it. Aeson said it was a special weapon, the best of its kind. Gazing at the glowing staff, he could see the essence of things, and it answered his wish to protect the city. Fenrir saw nothing special and lunged at Aeson with his claws extended. The attack was too slow. Aeson easily dodged, and a sword already gleamed in his other hand. Fenrir shouted it was useless, saying he has divine power while Aeson is just a weakling. Fenrir smirked. Don't think you can kill me with a simple blade. The hero never intended to cut him. In war, he fought creatures like that until his heart stopped. Fenrir opened his jaws to swallow the blow, but Aeson vanished in an instant, leaving the wolf stunned. No one noticed the hero suddenly appear and hit the attacking head right in the face. Fenrir's body sparked and one of his heads exploded. Aeson said coldly that it was better to stay silent if you did not know what to say. Fenrir exploded with rage. Losing his head over a mere man was out of the question. He fell from the roof, but got back to his feet. Aeson was right. A single head did not destroy the core. A normal Fenrir would already have been defeated. Deep in the beast's jaws glowed a dark sphere, a core. Each head held one. Aeson jumped in front of the monster. He knew the body would keep regenerating until he destroyed all the cores. Fenrir exhaled an icy blast, and the hero dodged. The other head struck again with flame. The longer the fight went on, the more the city was being destroyed. Aeson decided to end it as quickly as possible. Striking both cores at once is the best option. The decision was made. Aeson aimed his blade at the infernal Fenrir and said, "These are your last words, beast." He ordered his body to get faster and stronger, gathering power for the decisive strike. Flames wrapped the hero, who rushed at Fenrir. Fenrir answered with a double attack from both heads. 2 attacks missed. The flame and the cold passed by. Fenrir realized the blue flame was dispersing his breath. Aeson explained that the flame was created by mana and magic. It is real. It's not just for protection. He called to the flame to shine and pierce the enemies. Aeson pushed through fire and ice as he approached the beast. Blue flames cleared his path. Activating Ardor's justice, he held a staff in his left hand and a blade in his right, and a single straight strike felled Fenrir. At that moment, all the wolves in the city disappeared. The crowd was ecstatic. Aeson stood beside the monster's burning body. Rue shouted that this was incredible power. David couldn't believe his eyes. The hero wasn't just strong, but on a completely different level. Even though he was always so quiet and attentive, everyone realized they were facing the prophet himself, the teacher of the 100 heroes. As the victory unfolded, Deputy Mayor Woods arrived with soldiers and firefighters. The watchtower spotted the fighting. Woods was stunned to learn the hellish Fenrir had already been defeated. After the explanations, the boys received a reward and sincere recognition. Woods thanked the hero for saving the city. That same day, they held an official awards ceremony. Aeson and the team received their awards. That evening, Katadama hosted a festive banquet to mark the victory and the end of the mission. Aeson trusted what he heard, a report describing a search at the researcher's home. Almost all the documents were burned, and only 5 metal collars were found. That closed the metal sheep case, and everyone began celebrating. After that, the heroes helped rebuild the city, and the days in the trading city passed unnoticed. The mayor was due to return the day before the training. A knock came at the door, and Aeson went to open it. The messenger sincerely apologized to the master for bringing news of a change in the mayor's schedule. Aeson realized his return would be delayed when one of the leader's messengers announced the conference in the nearby magical city had been rescheduled. The mayor will be delayed for a few more days. Woods apologized, but Aeson just smiled and said there was nothing to forgive. The hero began to suspect that changes to the schedule might cause new problems. A magical beast appearing while the mayor was away could have caused panic if outsiders found out. Aeson offered to go to the magical city himself and deliver this important information. Woods was shocked because he had not expected that. Aeson said he planned to go there anyway. If they don't meet now, it could be too late. Woods shook the hero's hand and gave him a task. Aeson then decided to set out on a journey. The next morning, Aeson, Fila, and Rena stood at the south gate. Fila looked forward to the trip with the master, and Rena encouraged her. Aeson also enjoyed traveling in a large group. Mr. Woods handed him the letter and everything he needed for the trip. A familiar carriage pulled up, drawn by a unicorn. Ro greeted him and said they had not seen each other since the holiday. Woods had sent him to escort Aeson to the neighboring town, but the hero himself did not know. A volunteer familiar with the situation agreed to accompany them. Merchant Ro volunteered to help. He said he did not want to be someone who avoided taxes. Aeson had saved him more than once. As a member of the Katadami Guild, he wanted to be useful. The hero saw his sincerity and thanked him, and Ro replied that Aeson was the most caring person he'd ever met. Ro gestured for everyone to enter the carriage. It was comfortable this time, and the interior felt cozy and luxurious. Fila smiled. It had been a long time since she had traveled with talk and laughter. Aeson had been looking forward to it too. Rena admitted this was her first trip with others. Once everyone was settled, the carriage moved off as Ro announced the start of their journey. A few days passed. Fila looked out the window and pointed ahead at something interesting. It turned out to be a fortress and a landmark. From there, you could see the plain stretching out. Isan had not heard of her before, but guessed she had served well during the war. Ro confirmed that buildings from that era were indeed sturdy. As he rode by, the hero learned new things, and it was more interesting than an ordinary walk. Rina agreed, and Fila added that any journey with the master is a joy. Asen thanked Ro for driving carefully. Ro said it was his job. A smooth ride was just one of the trip's benefits. Following the advice of one of the 100 heroes, the roads were improved, and the cities were linked peacefully. Ro did not see this as a reason for praise. Isan saw it differently. If it can be used, then it's worth being grateful. Ro laughed. The hero seemed to like compliments, and was happy about that. Fila already knew that Mr. Asen praised even small things because it gave her more energy to work even better. Rina agreed. In their world, the master praised her simply for answering the letter. The merchant smiled and thanked him for that. Isan couldn't understand why anyone was surprised. If someone does their job well, they deserve praise. That's natural. After a short pause, they resumed their talk. Ro's carriage showed them many wonderful places. The merchant was glad that everyone enjoyed it. Over the past decade, many steamships have appeared, some as large as whole cities, and one of Asen's students even planned a similar ship. Fila declared that with the master, she could go to the ends of the earth, and that inspiration made her want to write a song. Soon they reached another breathtaking view. The lake sparkled in the sunlight. Isan said with excitement that the mountains looked beautiful. Ro confirmed they were the famous Maiden Mountains. The area was famous for its unique plants and animals, home to rare species. Its trails were protected and ideal for climbers. Because of the 100 heroes' help, all routes were opened quickly. Fila also heard about the initiative. One hero personally cut a path through the mountains so people could pass safely. In the mountains stood a road built by Isan's students. They created systems to help travelers. The students' work became part of daily life, and this genuinely pleased the master. Suddenly, Asen saw demons up ahead and warned Ro that there were at least 4 lizard demons. Ro couldn't see them, so he asked where exactly. Fila pointed the way, and he picked up his binoculars. Isan was right. From that distance, you can clearly see there are 4, despite the camouflage. They had adapted to the area, but they were still easy to spot. Asen asked if they were really dangerous. Ro replied that although attacks were rare, there had been reports of attacks on merchants. They did not expect to be friends with them. Rina noticed something strange, as if the lizard's feet were covered in slime. Ro looked through the binoculars again and confirmed it was flesh. Asen guessed they had tasted the demon's flesh, which made them so aggressive. The hero smiled at Ro and said it was time to solve the problem. The merchant asked if Asen was sure. He said leaving them by the road was dangerous and ordered the carriage to stop. When the carriage stopped, Asen jumped out and headed for the lizards. The girls jumped down too, wanting to go with him. The master did not object, so the 3 of them would go. Getting closer, the hero was surprised that the lizards ignored them and did not attack. Everyone's attention was fixed on the little fox burning in the flames. Rina realized it was a fire fox. Despite its demonic nature, the creature was still just a child. One of the lizards struck her with a paw and the fox was thrown back. Bleeding, she still managed to stay on her feet. They were already drooling with hunger. Rina guessed bitterly that the demons were constantly fighting. Asen confirmed it, but the situation felt unnatural. Hunting was not part of a demon's maturation stages, so something was wrong here. The lizards had clearly been tormenting the fox cub. Only a demon could cause such cruelty. Asen felt something was wrong. Calling to the creatures to stop, he made them turn toward the sound of his voice. Asen tried to explain that after tasting the demon's flesh, they came under the influence of magic. There may have been another reason, but the hero realized he could no longer talk to them. The lizards refused to listen, and instead of answering, they rushed at Asen. A cold stare and a warning. "I will destroy you." The students instantly destroyed 2 lizards. They told the master, and he understood. With a single sweeping stroke, he cut through the last 2 and said he was done. They stayed cautious, Rina on guard, and Fila scanned the area for any miasmi. A carriage pulled up and a merchant praised the heroes. Ro noted Asen's skill with the sword, and Asen replied that the enemy's moves were too predictable. What worried him most was the injured fox cub. The little one could barely stand on its paws, and the wound proved to be serious. Asen did not hesitate to help, but as he got closer, the beast became alert. Fire covered his body again, and he braced to defend himself. Ro suggested leaving him alone. Asen explained that these foxes burn when they feel strong emotions. Adults could burn the house, yet this one is still a baby that no one can get near. Without help, it will die. The hero asked if Ro had any healing potions. Ro said he did, but they were for humans and unicorns, not demons. Their components may have no effect or be harmful. Asen knew which ones would work and asked for the potions. Ro took 2 small bottles from the box and handed them to the hero. The potions had been prepared especially for the journey. Asen immediately noticed their quality. Ro said he bought them from a reliable source and asked how they would be used. Ro was surprised. He had not expected the hero to talk to the medications. Asen picked up the bottles and asked them to help the fox cub. The bottles lit up. Ro watched in surprise as Asen handed him a bottle and said it was for the people. The hero kept the other one for himself. Inside was a potion of blue belladonna and mountain onion. As he asked him to leave, the potion foamed, and the cork shot out like the cork from a champagne bottle. Ro watched in amazement as the color and magical structure changed. Asen confirmed that the potion now had a delicate consistency. It was a genuine healing potion made with good intentions. The hero thanked him. It was time to save the fox cub. Ro saw the fox cub still watching Asen warily, and the bleeding was getting worse. The hero simply picked him up in his arms. Ro cried out, but Asen calmed him, saying it was all right. The fox cub was ablaze, but the hero did not stop. Asen said softly that the little creature would be fine, and it relaxed a little, looking at him trustingly. The boy in scorched clothes patted the startled fox cub and said it did well. Ro, meanwhile, pointed worriedly at the flames. Asen said he was not in danger because magic protected him. Instead, he asked for the potion to be passed and the fox cub healed. Ro handed the bottle, and Asen slowly and carefully poured the liquid onto the wound. The wound began to close before everyone's eyes, and the effect was instantaneous. Ro was surprised that the human potion worked like that. Ro asked Asen how he did it. Asen said it was an accident. He mixed ingredients that suited fiery foxes, and the potion seemed to know what to do on its own. Ro agreed, but added that you can't create that without knowledge of demons. Asen admitted he once had the honor of studying with the beast healer's students. Ro was impressed, but Asen politely asked not to exaggerate, saying he was far from a master. Then he suggested checking the fox cub's skin, which was undamaged. The fox cub stared at its body in surprise. The hero noticed a strange pattern on its back and wrapped it in bandages as a precaution. After finishing, Asen let go of the fox cub. It immediately jumped up and ran happily in a circle. The student smiled and Ro sighed with relief. The hero checked himself. His clothes were slightly burned, but magic had protected his body. Ro suggested changing clothes, and Asen said they would restore themselves. Ro guessed the magic was triggered by damage. Asen was surprised that Ro had been right. The clothes were made by friends of one of his students. The apprentice said the master did not care about his clothes, so he gave him this magical outfit. This was complex, costly magic worthy of the prophet. Asen was surprised to find a fox pup settled on his shoulder. The child carefully licked the scorched glove. Asen thanked him and said not to worry. He would fix it himself. Fila and Rina ran up to the teacher smiling. Rina said the area was safe. The hero thanked the girls for their help and invited them back into the carriage. Releasing the fox cub, he suggested it go back home. The fox clung to his leg. Asen stopped, smiled, and asked what was wrong. Rina looked at him, and Fila said the fox was already with them and had probably remembered their scent. The baby jumped onto Asen's chest, and Asen realized the baby wanted to come along. Fila remembered how he once took her along the same way. The hero warned the fox that they were heading to the big city. The fox snorted angrily, and Rina thought he was trying to say something. His home was probably that way, but he was afraid, so he wanted to stay with them. Asen asked Ro if he could bring the fox with him to the magic city. Ro did not object. The fox was not aggressive, so it should be easy. Ro added that the unicorn was also a demonic creature. It was decided, and the hero smiled and invited the new friend to join. After some time, the travelers reached the magical city of Stratus. At the gate, Ro told Asen they had arrived and asked where the fox was. It hid under the hero's clothes. Rina noticed the fox liked to sit near the hero's heart. Ro pointed to the building at the end of the lane and suggested they go to the town hall. Asen said they had to take care of the paperwork first. Enro agreed that they needed a permit to keep the demonic beast. Here they can also gather information about the mayor of the trading city. Ison hurried to deliver the deputy mayor's letter. Their carriage rolled down the main street with many carts and people ahead. Ison noticed the city was alive and bright, like a real shopping mall. As the name suggested, magic aided development even in the smallest details. Even in the kitchen, they baked over open flames, and frozen desserts became popular. Ro promised to show everything. Ison smiled. The place really was magical. Rena could not hold back. Her mouth watered at the thought of trying the local food. At last, they arrived at the Magic City's town hall. A staff member ran out, apologized for the wait, and took care of the carriage and the luggage. Ison noticed everyone was hurrying somewhere, which even surprised Filu. Ro remembered it used to be quieter here, and decided to apply to register the beast. Both demon requests were approved fairly quickly. While Ro talked with Ison, a girl noticed them. Melissa, the secretary to the merchant town's mayor, recognized Ro, stepped forward to greet him, and also recognized Fila. She noticed that the other's aura had changed. Fila waved back cheerfully. Ro thought Fila used to be colder. Melissa grew curious and asked what had happened. Ro introduced his companions to Melissa, Rin, and Ison, and both smiled at her. Melissa asked to be called simply the secretary and wanted to know what business they had with the mayor. Ison handed her a letter, and she recognized her magical mark. She asked to inspect the contents, and the hero agreed. After that, she invited everyone for tea. Reading the letter, Melissa reacted the same way as Ro. Ison remembered that the letter had called him a prophet. Melissa wanted to confirm the letter was true. Ro confirmed everything and asked her to keep it secret. That explained why Philly's behavior had changed. Meanwhile, Fila showed Rin how the flowers opened in the teapot, and Rena watched the light and the petals with delight. Melissa finished reading, put the letter back, and said she would hand it to the mayor. Ison wanted to be sure everything was in order. Melissa assured everyone that everything was fine and offered to act as a mediator. Then suddenly someone behind her said, "This is not necessary." Everyone turned and saw a girl with messy hair. A beast folk with ears and a tail introduced herself as Lynette Strike, the mayor of the trading town, and said she had come to see her teacher. Ison smiled and asked how she was doing. Lynette said she was doing great, better than ever. They hadn't seen each other for a long time. Her tail wagged happily despite her serious face. Melissa barely held back a laugh. The protagonist smiled, too. Such behavior was typical for her race. Fila stepped closer. Lynette recognized her and joked that she had never been modest in front of the teacher, but Fila replied with a laugh. Everything changed the moment she left the theater. If not for Ison, things would have turned out differently. Lynette, surprised, asked why they had all come to the city and admitted she was a bit jealous. Fila said things had turned out that way and introduced Rin to Lynette. Lynette immediately recognized the girl, who had answered the teacher's letters. Rin confirmed this and gave her full name. Fila remembered their first meeting in the market town. Rin proved to be a wonderful person and a true sister. Lynette smiled and said her teacher's friends were her friends, and asked to be called by her name or simply sister. Rin agreed gladly. Ison noticed that Fila and Lynette had similar personalities, so it was no surprise they quickly got along with Rin. He handed the letter to his student. Lynette ran over right away, thanked him, and seemed a bit sharper than before. After reading the letter, she sincerely thanked the teacher for bringing her the report in person. Ison just shrugged. He was traveling the world and had simply decided to stop by, and Lynette admitted the girls with him were also a gift from fate. She asked Melissa when Melissa's term as mayor ends, then smiled and said there are a few years left, so there is no need to worry yet. Lynette joked that she'd check every opening. Ison couldn't understand how she had found out about their visit before Melissa. She pointed up. The meeting was on the roof. She had seen the teacher back when they were driving into town. To stay calm, she held her breath and walked in silence. She had gone a long way. Ison just smiled. Exactly what he'd expected from a sniper with eagle eyes. Lynette clenched her fist to hold back her emotions after praise she had not heard in a long time, and said she was not yet at a teacher's level, so would train even harder. From the way her tail wagged, she was overjoyed. Melissa assumed Mirka had left the meeting because of Ison, who wanted to apologize, but Lynette calmed him and said the break had just started. This break only recharged her energy, so the meeting will be even more effective, and Lynette was glad the heroes had come. Ison found it odd that the meeting was on the roof. Maybe it was just a magical tradition. It was more serious. They needed to see the whole city and its outskirts. Ison realized it was not simple. Lynette admitted the city's very existence is at risk. Bringing up survival made Ison hesitate about whether she could share that information as mayor. Lynette nodded, not wanting to bother the teacher, but they would be very grateful for help. Ison asked the students for their opinion. Rin and Fila gladly agreed to help. Ro also offered support and had many partners ready to help. After things were clarified, Ison asked for more details. Lynette suggested going up to the roof, where it would be easier to talk with the other city leaders. She looked at Melissa, who was listening quietly and intently. Melissa quickly understood everything, focused on the magic, and sent it all to everyone telepathically. They were allowed to join the meeting. Ison was impressed. Melissa, even in her role as a secretary, handled negotiations skillfully with telepathy. She motioned for them and led them to the roof. On the roof, other city representatives were already waiting for them. They recognized the great hero Ison and were honored by his visit. A young man introduced himself as Shard, leader of the Magic City, and thanked them for their willingness to cooperate, saying everything had already been handed over to him. Ison smiled and said he was glad to meet them too, but still did not understand what was happening and asked for an explanation. Smiling, Shard invited everyone to the table, knowing a long story lay ahead. Once everyone had settled, Shard began by saying it all started recently, when a pillar of fire rose above the Maddox volcano to the east. He pointed to the mountains in the distance. Fila assumed it was a popular hiking trail, but Shard reminded them it was an active volcano. No ash was visible, but people thought the cause was the mountain's mistress, the Empress. Rin was stunned. She did not know the Lady of the Mountains really existed. The demoness had lived there for many years and had her own story. Ro confirmed Shard's words. Thanks to her, the number of demons in the mountains did not increase. The Empress was wise and understood human speech. Her family had good ties with the city for many generations. Recently, something changed. Shard suspected the Pillar of Fire was her magic, very similar to Kitsunebu. As the explorers climbed into the mountains, a voice from the darkness warned them to stay back. It was full of fury. They felt the heat and danger and could not move forward. Ison asked what happened next. Banning the climb up the mountain was the right move. The fire grew stronger every day, and the heat reached the town. Danger closed in on the mountain. Reaching the Empress's palace was already impossible, and the situation was becoming critical. Shard feared the lava would soon reach the city. Magic had limits, and it was getting harder to maintain them. Lynette grabbed her bow and said this was why they had called the heroes. The city would soon be unsafe. Ison realized he was facing a real sniper again. He smiled, knowing that with an arrow like that she could even reach a volcano. Shard confirmed that her arrows were filled with frost magic. If the lava flows, they will just freeze it. You could also knock off the red-hot fragments. Ison was impressed, although he did not doubt Lynette's skill. If the Empress became furious, they planned to use tranquilizer arrows or, as a last resort, lethal arrows, so they gathered everyone. Ison realized they were discussing every possible option. The city's residents did not want to attack first. The hero guessed the Empress was angry, but he had to talk to her. Lynette sent arrows carrying messages, but she received no reply. Ison asked if she really knew how to read. Even as she stayed silent, officials tried to calm her anger. The townspeople loved the Empress and did not want to lose her. The mayor confirmed that the death of the Empress is their last resort. Ison praised Lynette for defending the city with honor. After being praised, the girl grew nervous and asked to be patted on the head. Barely holding back, she went up to the teacher and said it would be a great motivation. Ison saw a trace of Fela in her, and although the matter was not yet settled, he agreed. He stood and gently stroked her head. Melissa smiled as Lynette's tail wagged every which way. People on the roof saw the mayor that way for the first time. Fila whispered that it was all happening right in front of the secretary. Rin was surprised by how openly Lynette showed her feelings. Lynette had been hard to read in letters, but now everything was clear. Her letters were neat, but none showed her true emotions. Lynette told Rin that she really opens up when she is near. Lynette felt inspired, apologized for asking to be petted, and asked about the teacher's decision. Ison replied with a smile. The hero decided to speak with the Empress first. If he is lucky, he will learn the truth directly. Everyone was stunned at how he would approach such a dangerous mountain, but Asan promised to be careful. First, he suggested they take a walk to survey the area before returning. Shard noticed a little fox cub peeking out from under Asan's clothes and asked who it was. The hero explained that they rescued him on the road from demons, so the little boy kept hiding all the time and still did not feel safe. The fox cub looked at the mountains. Maybe his home was there. Asan suspected he had seen something. The child sighed wearily. The hero warned it was dangerous, but wanted to take the risk for the truth. Asan told Shard he would set out for the mountains to check on the Empress and find a home for the fox cub. Shard wanted to be sure of the hero's intentions and joined, creating a new research team. Asan didn't mind. Shard's help would be useful, and he promised to do everything he could. Shard thanked the hero for his bravery, and, to avoid a clash with the Empress, proposed working together. Asan accepted, and the group set out.